Hello everyone, and welcome to this, the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, brought to you by my good self, Dan, and as always, the man of incredible style and grace, and the beautiful furry face, dear old Philip. How you doing, Phil?
Hello. I'm good, thank you.
There you go. Completely freestyled that. That was good. And we've also got Joe. How's it going, Joe?
Why don't I get fancy intros?
I couldn't do it twice, Joe. We've tried to record this intro so many times. I dare not risk trying to come up with two kind of flavourful intros for someone. I was just amazed that I sort of styled out the Phil one.
Yeah.
Would
Is
you?
it because I sit here and touch things? And you're punishing me.
I'm not punishing you for touching things.
For being a fiddler.
You should be applauded for your fiddling antics. It's a good way to be. We're all fiddlers in our own ways.
Yeah.
Let that, just sit out there for a while.
In our man room.
We could try and come up with a more colourful intro for you, Joe, if you'd like one. What could we do? You could try and do it. How would you like to be described if ever given the opportunity?
Majestic. Like a swan.
Anything else?
Handsome.
Handsome and majestic.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try and work this in. If it goes wrong, I'll just let it roll through. So we do the Phil thing. Hello, Phil. How's it going? And then we go. And then also, we are joined by the incredibly majestic, somewhat stupendous, fabulously handsome. Did you say handsome? What was the other word? I've forgotten already.
I don't know.
Well, you've forgotten as well. Who is this? Handsome or magnificent? Oh, God. Anyway, it's Joe. Hello, Joe.
All right. How's it going?
All right. It's going all West Country on us there. But there you go. That is that. These are us, the peoples. We've had a very interesting couple of weeks of not much at all, really. It's not been the busiest period for the hobby. Obviously, the big FAQ came out, and we talked about that in the last episode. If you haven't checked that out already, please do so. Episode 6, 40k, the big FAQ 2, 2018, where we talk at great lengths about all the new rules and things that goes on there. So please check that out if you haven't had a chance to do so already. Although, obviously, don't go right now. Don't go right away. You want to listen to this one first, and then, go back and listen to them all. All of them. All 6 that preceded this one. Go on now. Well, not now. Later. Do that later.
We'll wait.
Well, we will wait through the majesty of modern technology. It'll seem like we're waiting, but we're not really. We're very impatient. But yeah, so not much has been going on for the last couple of weeks from a hobby perspective. October's not that impressive, really, is it? It's just a Codex and Speed Freaks, unless anyone knows any more than that right now. Anyone?
It would have been better had they have not leaked everything like 2 months ago.
That probably would have been helpful. I think it was as early ago as August as Speed Freaks got leaked out into the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, they kind of scuppered themselves on that one.
They did, yeah. And then, but they sort of built it up with lots of hype going, October's going to be amazing. And it's currently the 16th of October, and not a single orc has been released. Not even on pre-order yet.
I guess it's a bit like the FAQ September. It was the last few days of September is when it comes out. So you've just got to be patient and wait till the last 2 weeks or last week of October for it all to come out. If anyone thought it was going to be more on a Codex and Speed Freaks, I think you were just your hopes were too high.
I don't think their hopes were too high, though, because the way Warhammer Games Workshop hyped up the whole thing, Warhammer Community Games Workshop hyped up the whole thing, it seemed as if it was reasonable to assume that we were going to get loads of cool new orc stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with the Speed Freak releases. They look good, but it's not quite the level of release that, where's the, what are they called? The big orcs. They were talking loads about the big orcs, weren't they?
The Prime Orc.
Yeah, the Prime Orcs. Where are those?
They still might come, or they might come down the line. But that could just be the rumour mill, so who knows?
And that's it, mate. It's not going to happen. We're going to get around to Warhammer 40,000 Quest on all those Slanesh booby horses that they've got on the horizon. It's not, the orcs are done. Speed freaks, move on to the booby horse. That's what everyone's looking forward to the most. But anyway, so that's that. Me and Phil actually went up to Warhammer World last week, didn't we, Phil?
We did. Had a final time.
Absolutely. You met your living hero, the man himself. Who did you meet at Warhammer World, Phil?
It was John Blanche.
John Blanche.
Who is a famous artist and I believe some kind of creative director, head honcho at Games Workshop. Semi-retired now, but still knocking out some amazing concept art.
He seemed like an absolutely lovely fella as well, to be fair.
He was. So originally I spied him in Bugman's, having lunch with Jez Goodwin, obviously sharing kind of top secret ideas, no doubt, or just having a chinwag. And then as he was leaving, I spotted him by the exit and was just like, "Oh, hello." I just didn't know what to say. I was a bit shocked. Like, what do I say to him? How do I? I just sort of fangirled out on him a little bit and talked about Inquisitor and the Inc 28 Facebook group that he's quite prevalent in.
You were so and utterly in awe of the man, you changed gender with regards to your fandom. You went from fanboy to fangirl. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's true. Fanboy is a thing, I guess.
Well, it is, absolutely.
Fangirl is probably more appropriate in this context.
It was a beautiful scene. As I was, when I'd last seen Phil, we had both gone into different toilets in the downstairs area of Warhammer World. And obviously, Phil had vacated far sooner than myself, and I walked out of the toilets only to see Phil gleefully showing his collection of Chaos Cultists to Mr. Blanche. And what's this?
Renegade Guard. You've got a
Renegade Guard. I apologise.
There's a big difference.
Well, you use them as cultists when you play them in Kill Team, though, right?
Well, that's true because there are no rules.
So you can understand my confusion.
Okay. No, I do. That's good.
But anyway, and what was the only real piece of feedback that Mr. Blanche gave you at the end of it, Phil?
Well, he was like, it's very good, very good. And then I showed him another model that I had done, and he seemed really interested in it. But the takeaway bit of feedback was paint your models.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm so sorry, sir. I will do it immediately.
Exactly.
It's hilarious because you are notorious for despising anyone that plays with unpainted models.
Well, yes. Even Richard commented on my Instagram post saying, "You're playing with unpainted models? Like, as in, what is this?" I normally pride myself on never playing with painted models. Also, from a practical point of view, I tend to do a sub-assembly, so I can't physically play with them because they normally have their arms missing and stuff like that. But this time I'd glued them all together and was playing with them. And letting the team down because we were playing with our friend Sean and he had some lovely painted models and you had some lovely painted models.
Not of my own doing though. Let's give credit where it's due to dear old Joe. My Blood Angel army looks good because Joe painted it, which is appreciated, Joe. Well done, you.
I try. I honestly do try.
He does honestly try. He does great work, absolutely. Available for hire, I'd imagine, possibly. Who knows? I don't know whether that's even true.
I don't even have enough time to paint my own models.
I know, you're too busy painting mine.
I've got an entire drawer dedicated to models that I need to paint for Dan.
Absolutely.
That sounds like quite a lot.
It is quite a lot, but that's just how in debt he is to me at this moment.
Yeah.
But there you go. I
feel like I need to pre-donate some body parts in case you should fall ill, and then that way it covers any future debt.
Oh, thanks, man. You'll be like one of those sort of clone humans from that movie that Andrew Garfield was in, where he was the clone of someone, and they cut him open and took all his organs out. Was it The Island? I can't remember what it was called. It was very sad though, wasn't it? Very depressing.
It was a remake of an old TV show.
Yeah. No, not the... Are you thinking of The Prisoner?
Yeah.
No! That's the thing with the floating ball.
Yeah.
Different film.
Funny story, I've actually been to that beach and I ran down it pretending there was a giant floating ball chasing me.
I've also been to that location. I didn't do that, but I did. We went there for a Christmas party 10 years ago, and I did get incredibly drunk at the Christmas party. And then when I was put to bed by my friends, as my head hit the pillow, I threw up violently over the side of my bed, and I was so hungover the next day, and I'd woken up and I'd seen all this vomit on the floor, and I was like, oh dear, this is not a good situation. So I emptied the contents of my wallet, which at the time I think was somewhere in the region of between 30 and 40 pounds. Let's say 36 pounds. That's a nice number. And I emptied the contents of my wallet on the side, and I wrote a note. I'm really, really sorry, but I'm too hungover to do anything about this. Please accept this money. And I just left. I was like, well, that's all I can do. Yeah, as I understood from a friend who was still there as the cleaners were, looking at the room, there was a lot of commotion about the hideous state that I'd left the place in. But there you go. That was my experience of the prisoner island, and not so much. I wish I'd had some kind of, ball type thing that I could have thrown up in. That would have been very useful. But yeah, so we went to Warhammer World. We played some games. Me and Phil played one game of Warhammer 40,000, Krieg versus Blood Angels. We may do a battle report thing. We took loads of photos. You can see them on our Instagram account, right, Joe? Yeah. Our Instagram.
You can. I put them up. I put 10 up because that's as many as you're allowed to put up.
A tease.
In a single.
A teasing image. They're also on the Beyond the Tabletop Instagram, right, Phil?
Just a couple though. I need to probably post more.
We might do a battle report around that. We were contemplating doing like a photo bat rep because despite the fact we've actually taken video from tournaments and stuff within Warhammer World before, you're not really supposed to do it. And it's actually quite easy to get away with it at tournaments because no one's really got time to pay attention to you. But when you're there on a Thursday, it's a little bit more obvious when you're there going, hey, everybody, playing games. So I figured, why bother? But that all happened, so that was good. And then beyond
we played some Kill Team as well.
We did play some Kill Team.
The new boards are really lovely, actually. They've got a whole bunch of... Is it 3x3? Yeah, 3x3.
Yeah, whatever the dimensions are. They're done specifically to the dimensions of Kill Team, yeah.
Wasn't it? I thought they did it to the dimensions of Necromunda when that came out.
Well, that's possibly also true. I don't know. It worked well.
I think they're sort of universal boards because some of them use a Zone Mortalis, some of them use some of the... What's the one that we played on? It was is it like the Space Marine Fort? I can't quite remember the name.
The Forge World tile?
Yes, it's the Forge World tile.
It's like an Imperial bunker or something, isn't it?
Yeah, and then what they've done is on two sides, they've extended them with Zone Mortalis tiles at the flat plane ones, but then they've built loads of Sector Mechanicum scenery all around it and integrated it. And it looks really good. There's a big crane going across, so it's turned into a bit of a dock, I guess. They're really fantastic to play on, actually. Really enjoyable. And then we did another free-player game using the, what's it called? The Mining Factory one. That's a very large board.
Oh yeah, the very multi-level rocky. It's brilliant board.
Mining facility, that's it.
Yeah, probably too big for a game of Kill Team if you were just doing a two-player game. Because when me and Phil came across, because we'd managed to order the board when we first came in the Friday morning, Phil was like, "Let's play Kill Team on this, just the two of us." And I was like, "God no, there is no point. We're never going to get a game out of this."
Wasn't that the repurposed Minds and Moria board from many moons ago?
There you go. That was, as I told you, Phil, it definitely had it. Yeah, it must have been. But anyway, there you go. So we did the Warhammer World thing, which was super fun. And then, nothing else has really come out since talking through the big FAQ. Looking forward to Orcs when they finally emerge. Looking forward to Speed Freaks. Doubt we'll play the game itself, but looking forward to seeing the models and things that come out of that. And that's that on that front.
There's Kill Team Commanders.
There was Kill Team Commanders.
That's on pre-order as we speak, and probably by the time this comes out, I guess it will be live and into the wild.
Well, this is the actual thing, because the intent for this episode is to go out on Thursday, depending upon editing time. I've got a few bugs with that I need to fix out, but if you're hearing this, that's irrelevant because I've sorted them now. So there you go. Don't even know why I bothered mentioning it. But yeah, so the intent is still to have this go out Thursday, but just for everyone's future reference, we talked about it, though we still want to record on a Wednesday, although today is actually a Tuesday. Fun story. But though the intent is to record every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, we were thinking about it, and we're going to try and actually set the release date for these as every other Saturday, as opposed to every other Thursday. Because Thursday it was just turning out that I'd get home from work and start trying to edit it, and then I wouldn't get it done till about like 9, 10, and then I'd upload it, and bizarrely the YouTube version of it's massive, and then it was always that. It's just complicated. At least if we change it to maybe Saturday, Sunday, it'll happen either Saturday or Sunday every other week. I can't be more precise than that at this moment in time. But for this one, if all things are equal, you'll be listening to this from Thursday onwards, hopefully. Hope you're enjoying it. Thank you. So, that said, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. So, we obviously talked about the big FAQ last time, as I already said in episode 6. Please listen again, but not now, sometime later. I don't know whether I should do that guy from that other wargaming channel where he goes, "Pachow!" and points towards the top left-hand corner, but, top. Anyway, yeah, your left, my right. But yeah, I'm not going to do that, because I'm not even on screen when I do this. It's madness. Anyway, point is, we talked about the big FAQ in the last episode. This time around, we're going to talk about things that we would like to see improved moving forwards. So in the first segment of today's episode, we're going to talk about rules, in particular, in 8th edition, that we're a little bit perplexed by and that we would like to see changed. So we're going to talk about the rule as it is, and then make some recommendations about how that could be improved going forwards. After that, once that's all said and done, we're going to move on to the second section of today's episode, which will be talking about specific units in the game that we think at this moment in time are not fully representational of what they could potentially become. Each one of us will pick one unit, and we'll talk about what we think could improve that unit to make it potentially more fluffy, more in keeping with the actual narrative, or just reflecting more of what you feel the unit should be. So we'll talk through that, and then to close us out, we're going to talk to Joe as he tells us what he's going to be taking, or at least what he's theoretically going to be taking, to the Grand Tournament Heat 3, much like I did 2 episodes ago. He'll be talking through his army list plans. Have I missed anything, gentlemen?
No, I think you've covered it.
Fabulous. Is
Do
Joe
you
still
want
there?
to talk about something? So, what things that we want to like unit entries, but also game mechanics, isn't it?
Yeah. So game mechanics. Have you fallen asleep on me, Joe?
No.
Have you zoned out? So yes, the first thing we were talking about, I just did the whole thing, and we even talked about this at length before we started recording this. We talked about.
I thought you only mentioned like units that you want to change.
You've clearly blacked out on us here. And the thing is,
I'm not allowed I'm sat in this
conversations-
room and I'm not allowed to touch anything. I'm just only allowed to just stare at a wall.
These conversations are recorded, Joe. You just make yourself seem more stupid. So yes, we'll talk about mechanics or rules, and then we'll talk about units, and then you can tell us about your army list plans. Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Mate, I'm very excited for you. I think we should let you introduce the next topic once we get through the transitional noises.
Well, I can't remember what the next topic was.
What? Come on, Joe, do the transitional noises for us now. Come on now.
So, the first segment of tonight, having written everything down, will be game mechanics that we'd like to potentially change or see improved, or things we have small gripes against. So, for instance, mine is characters, and how they're almost too powerful within the current edition, and how you end up with weird situations of can you shoot them, can't you shoot them. It's all just a bit overly complicated.
You're not keen on the characters, Joe?
No, I'm not really, because now the game is designed around having several characters who create a 6-inch bubble around them, and say, for instance, a Space Marine player will have 5 intercessor squads. Every single one of those squads gets re-roll 1s to hit, and then you put a lieutenant there, and they all get re-roll 1s to wound, and then you put an ancient there, and then for every one of those that dies, you roll a 4 up, and then it gets to shoot again for free. But then obviously it gets the buffs from the other 2 characters. I just think it's a bit mad.
I was going to say, in the Ancient as well, the really weird thing about that is because of how weirdly it's written, even if they were within 1 inch of something or died in combat, they can still shoot when they die on a 4+, in that example.
Yeah, and it's all a bit mad. It's like, because in previous editions, you could have several characters, or a single character in a squad, and he would buff only that squad. I know it resulted in situations where you had like Death Stars running around, but you can put rules in to stop that. Because before you'd have Blood Angels, Dark Angels, and Space Marines all in one squad with a White Scar librarian driving around being mad. Whereas now you could just be like single chapter only.
He used to have the weird eye, didn't he? The eye ignore cover eye.
But you could deal with a single unit, and then all other units just worked as how they worked in their codex. Whereas now you've got several units with their data sheets that you're reading, and then, for instance, if you start a new army, I've got to look at this unit, and then be like, but at the same time, I have to think about all these aura effects that are going on around, and I think it's too much. It needs to be brought into control somehow.
I guess that's the sort of the list building element of 8th edition, is sort of looking at how those aura effects stack with each individual unit and how you optimize that. Now, I think that's like almost one of the core mechanics of this edition that make it different from previous editions.
Yeah.
I quite like it, but I think there are, like I said, sometimes when you're just giving one or several units several buffs across like the majority of their army, it can get a bit much. Or some armies have loads and then other armies don't have any.
Yeah, and some armies have loads of aura effects. So, for instance, most armies have a HQ option that gives everyone within 6 inches reroll 1s to hit. And that would be fine if everyone's mainstay HQ option did that, but they don't. So I think Necrons, for instance, they have like a leadership buff, and then one character or one unit within 12 inches or something they select and they add +1. It doesn't seem to make sense, because a guard don't have it either, do they, Phil?
They can take, I think Yarrick gives them reroll 1s, and Sergeant Harker can do it as well, I believe. But for example, my Krieg guys can't get any kind of reroll 1s whatsoever without going into the other regiment faction keywords.
It's not standardized, which I think would kind of help maybe.
I don't think necessarily they need to standardize it. I don't think that's the huge issue here. I think the issue is more to do with the effect of these auras and the way that they can come into play, specifically around the inevitable kind of daisy chaining units and the effects that those things have. I've seen a lot of orc players who have daisy chaining mobs coming off of a big mech with a custom force field and a pain boy giving them, ignoring damage on 5s or 6s or whatever it is. Or, obviously, in addition to that, there's the usual kind of council of Nurgle characters that sit in the middle of the board next to a tree that gives the entire unit, re-roll 1s on disgustingly resilient, or re-roll 1s on invuns, increasing invuns from, well, now it's capped at 4+, but it used to be like 3+, -2 to hit the squad, and all this other nonsense shenanigans that just turns Yeah, it used to be a joke in 5th edition because in 5th edition the Orc Codex of 5th edition introduced custom force fields, and the whole idea back then was the same thing that people used to joke, oh, I can daisy chain to the custom force field, and then when I daisy chain to the custom force field, as long as the units are daisy chained in, I get the cover save benefit. But then, the benefit of what the custom force field was by 5th edition standards, it was nowhere near as devastating as they are now. I mean, okay, yeah, sure, it still had the same fundamental problem, but it was relatively isolated to the orcs, and that was kind of a funny exploitation that, to be honest, was rectified in later editions. I think I want to say 7th edition book, because I don't think orcs had a 6th edition book. If they did, it was towards the end of 6th. But long story short, they kind of got rid of all that after, the weird period of time that was that particular instance with orcs. But, it wasn't that exploitative even then, not to the extent that it is now. I mean, most of the armies that I've lost to in tournament play have been some kind of conga line army that's going, I've got all these buffs because one dude's within 6, and then the remaining 29 of them are everywhere. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the combination of the aura benefits being you just have to be within 6 and not wholly within, but also the fact that there's so many units with like 10 plus models. Like if most unit sizes were 10, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But when you start getting 20 or 30, or the ability to like mob up and create like several 10-man squads into a 20 or 30-man squad, that's sort of where you sort of see the abuse of the mechanics. And I think a lot of the rules writers obviously go, oh, this is a cool rule. Yeah, give them +1 or like a reroll. That's great. Oh, let's have this banner that does this other thing. But they don't necessarily, I think they just have overlooked a few of the combinations. And that's what's sort of coming out of the top tournaments are these powerful combos of, it's a bit like the plague bearers with the +2 toughness and the minus whatever to hit. Stuff like that is just ridiculous. And at least they're toning that down in the FAQ, and I'm sure we see that more often. Maybe there's just too many aura buffs for most armies in general, but it does create a flavorful part of your army.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree that a kind of command section should have a benefit, but I agree as well, though, that the effects of that benefit are too widely felt. How would you fix it, Joe, based on it being a problem? What would your solution be?
I think either have characters join units again, which would also solve the whole can I target a character, can't I target a character kind of situation. Or have their ability only affect one unit at a time.
So for me, of those two ideas, I'd worry about going back to characters joining units only from the perspective that characters joining units created a whole kind of additional set of rules that were themselves very not ambiguous, because they were quite clearly understood, but they weren't elegant, right? It was stuff like
you get the mixed toughness and armor saves and stuff like that, so you can abuse those in different ways.
Yeah, well, certainly in this edition, right? Because you can start to tank stuff. Admittedly, though, they've kind of created an elegant solution to that, which is if anything in the squad takes a wound, then you have to resolve all the future wounds on that model until it's dead. But if you had a character, it could join the unit, tank a couple hits, and then leave based on that mechanic, assuming you're talking about exiting and entering squads, unless you went for a kind of third edition command squad rule where it's you assign the squad to the character. I suppose that could work it. But yeah, see that rule, I'm not totally against it, but because even in like 7th edition when they introduced the challenge mechanic, and it was like, I issue a challenge, I accept the challenge, and then your character's done a ton of wounds to my character, and then they spill over into the squad, or even worse if you don't accept the challenge, and then all sorts of shenanigans. But again, it was so the rules for challenges were never probably even done correctly, because the amount of times where someone would get a charge off and then just be like, oh, my character that was 20 inches away teleports across to yours or whatever. It's like, well, that's not technically how it's supposed to be interpreted. You were supposed to consolidate it in free and consolidate it in free, and if you were in base-to-base contact. But anyway, there's a long story short. So
or maybe have aura effects become units wholly within.
Yeah.
But maybe increase the size of the bubble, because there will be instances where, like, so for instance, cultists or bloodletters or plague bearers, big units that can't fit naturally within that 6 inches, maybe bump it up to 9.
I think that's a good solution, and it's similar to how like cover saves work when you're in ruins. So if you've got 1 or 2 models out of that, the whole unit doesn't get it. But as soon as those 2 are dead, or you've moved them in, then you gain it. So I think that's probably the simplest solution. But you would have to probably, like I said, tweak the ranges to make it work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that is probably one of the best solutions.
It would definitely mitigate the conga lines going across the map. That's for sure.
Well, it would create a relative restriction to this, benefit. I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. Within most kind of competitive match play games, you can lay out your table in terms of where the objectives go, and you can probably put your tree and this big unit of, plague bearers around the tree, and be like, well, I've locked down maybe 1 or 2 objectives because of the tree aura and what I've been able to, create around it. But that's not necessarily as game-breaking as what we've got currently, which is I control everything, and I'm -2 to hit, and I'm toughness 5, and I'm re-rolling everything, or whatever the combination.
Well, one additional solution to that would also be, and this is something that a lot of tournaments already do, and that's to allow 1 unit to only secure 1 objective at a time. So a big 30-man unit can't be spread across the map on several objectives. Yeah, it can only control 1.
Well, I do agree with that as well, to be fair. That is certainly something that could work. The only other thing was, and this came up in conversation quite a lot when, between us anyway, when the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum Codex got FAQ'd early doors because of how perceived, how broken commissars were perceived to be.
Mm.
And they came up with that really weird ruling on them, which didn't really seem to make an awful lot of sense to me. But I actually always feel like there should be a rule around the fact of if your unit exceeds a certain size, the command infrastructure should be disrupted. It's one of those things that it's like, how big's your squad? It's 30 men. Okay, cool. Anything over 15 or anything over 10, all of a sudden can't be, subjugated to the rules of auras because they're just a unorganized rabble. And admittedly, that doesn't necessarily reflect, some of the more elite units, I guess. And maybe you could but you could retrospectively add a rule to units that can exceed 10 models, which are a little bit more disciplined. Like, I don't know, is there a unit?
Chaos Space Marines can go up to about 20 models.
See, but Chaos Space Marines to me should be a disorganized rabble if they become 20 models, right? Because again, they're not. I mean, admittedly, once upon a time they were these drilled Space Marines, loyalist Space Marines. But now they've gone mad. They've gone chaos, haven't they? So it's reasonable to assume if they go over 10 men that I can't think of any loyalist Imperial
Guardians.
Elder Guardians.
Yeah.
Yeah, their budget.
So they can be over 20, or they can go up to 20.
They can go up to 20, and I agree. I think they should be disorganized if they go over 20, because I think they're just a bunch of, they're a bunch of, chefs and, pot makers or whatever it is. They're a bunch of, they're literally like, they're just the general populace. They shouldn't really be, drilled soldiers, should they? So
I do like the idea that, so if you've got your normal squad size is 10, and they can have the auras affect them. And like I said, if you go over 10, so if you've got 11 or 20 or 30, you are a mob, and in essence can't be affected by auras, because that would also change the meta drastically. Because at the moment it's very horde heavy in like tournament lists. Because horde, they have so much, they have so many bonuses. Like they can be in cover, they can have so much board control, which is massive. But then it's so easy to stack buffs and benefits to them. And now, if you suddenly change these large like mobs like cultists and plague bearers, or like orc mobs, to not having those benefits, it's like they're still good because you still want them probably for board control, but they're just not ridiculously like overpowered for the cheap points that they should cost.
Because the
and
thing
that gives you a really good distinction between them.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you think about the fluff, the narrative that frames all of this, right? I mean, I was listening to the audio book for Dark Imperium, where spoilers, at some point some Nurgle demons appear. I won't say where in case none of you've listened or read it yet. But some Nurgle demons appear, and they're all mucking around with each other. That is how I managed to save myself from swearing there. They're all mucking around with each other because they're all demons, and they're all like, big greater demon, slap him on the horns, I don't care, I'm having a laugh, I'm running about, and I'm mad, and the greater demons are like, come on lads, get it together, we gotta go over there, and they're like, over there, off we go, la la la, and it's that thing where it's like, that's what that unit would be like. It couldn't be controlled. It could be coaxed. It could be incentivized. But to say that it would be able to benefit from all these command benefits and things like that, it's like, well, could you?
While creating a nice like formation of like a star shape or a line of some kind, like a conga line going around in very specific points.
Exactly.
There's also situations where, say, a unit gets split up and can't move over. So you've got like one 30-man blob over 3 objectives, which has then been systematically had models removed in the middle.
Yeah, and they checked. So they, in the very first beta rules, they added a rule that said if you break coherency, that unit can't then move. If they had sort of changed that to say you must always try and, in your movement phase, bring your models together closer for coherency, then that would also help solve that problem because
one of those
objectives.
Yeah, but one of those models can be stood next to a character, and all the models from that unit are still receiving the buff. Even though so, for instance, like the Nurgle demons, for instance, things like say Nurglings or Plague Bearers, they just get bored and wander off. They wouldn't take orders from anybody.
Well, also as well, I mean, my perspective on it, because in Age of Sigmar 2, they ruled it that if a unit is broken from coherency, you need to break it into you have to nominate a section of that unit, and then that becomes the new unit, and everything else is removed. In my opinion, in 40k, they should change it that if you break a unit down so as none of it's in squad coherency and none of it can move to being squad coherency in the upcoming turn, in the next turn, the whole unit should be deleted. It should be removed, because in Age of Sigmar there are units that can influence the things that get killed. For the most part, unless I'm mistakenly forgetting very specific things, I think randomly, I want to say Greyfax can choose what she kills, unless I'm mistaken. Anyone want to pipe up and tell me I'm wrong?
Hang on, I've got the book near me.
I think Inquisitor Greyfax is probably the only thing in the game that can do this, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But other than that,
I don't have the book near me.
All right, there we go. The only thing that I'm aware of that can kill stuff that is of their choosing and not the controlling players is potentially Greyfax. But if you take her out of the equation, and that's assuming I'm even correct, which I'm sure we'll verify in a second, nothing else can do that, right? Because in Age of Sigmar, Star Drakes can just kill whatever they want, and then that creates this really awkward situation where a Star Drake can come in and cut through the middle of a unit, and then you have to remove one half of it, which is tactically interesting and not too penalising to the player that has to remove potentially a third of their unit or whatever's left after the Star Drake kills a few of them. But in this instance, in almost all circumstances, other than maybe Greyfax, you choose what stuff dies. So if you chose to break your unit up into 6 independent little silos all over the board, well, you knew the risks and you knew what you were doing, so the whole thing just gets deleted. I think that's the most fair and honest way of dealing with that problem, as opposed to the Age of Sigmar one. Just kill it all. Dead.
So I've got Greyfax's rules here.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything that she can do what you're saying, but she does have Psyoculum. It says Inquisitor Greyfax can target enemy characters that have a cycle or demon keyword, even if they're not the closest enemy unit.
Okay.
And I think that's the only thing that's similar to what you're doing. There's nothing that says she gets to particularly choose a model.
Is there any of the other Inquisitors that have that rule? I swear one Inquisitor might have it. Again, I'm totally
Eversaw have it? Doesn't Eversaw have it? He used to have that rule in the 7th.
Yeah. Well, anyway, look. So long story short, I'm wrong about Greyfax, which is good because that verifies what I'm saying. It's totally up to you what dies. Therefore, accept it that if you remove all your stuff that keeps you in coherency, your whole unit drops dead. Sorry, you didn't have to do that. You chose to for some tactical benefit. But now the downside is, in your preceding turn, they're all dead. Oh well, your choice, I think that's the way you go with that. But that's me. What do you reckon? Do you think I'm being mad? Do you think I'm being rude? Do you think I'm being cruel?
I think it's a good idea. I think sticking with you select part of that unit and that stays and everyone else dies.
That also works.
That does also work, to be fair.
Yeah, I think if you were to make it so auras were wholly within rather than just within, that would also solve the problem because then people wouldn't be stretching them out so far. Or if you sort of do a combo, so you could say aura abilities only work. So you could have aura abilities work within 6 inches, not wholly within, but that unit must be completely within coherency as well. And then you could double that up with a rule that says if something's out of coherency and it can't move back that turn, part of it's destroyed. Because what you don't want is a unit has its coherency broken. It can then be within coherency next turn, but it's still benefiting from an aura ability while that chain is broken. So I think whenever, even if it's just for one turn, that it's out of coherency, that it shouldn't be able to be buffed.
I mean, there's a whole heap of different solutions there. I think all of them are better than where we are currently. I think, like I say, if you think of any unit that exceeds 10 models, they're usually some kind of mad rabble, with the exception of potentially Guardians, as Joe correctly pointed out. But even then, I'd say, it's not like Elder are having the hardest time at the moment. If their 20-man Guardian units take a bit of a hit, I mean, to be honest with you, the 20-man Guardian units don't care about auras. They're not the sort of unit that relies on auras. They just basically come down, go Discipline of the Black Guardians, and then just shoot you in the face with 2+ to hit. That's all they do. So
you can get things like Imperial Guardsmen, like the basic infantry. They can, with a stratagem, blob up and go over 10. So you could have a 20 or 30-man unit if you did that stratagem several times.
But again, you've got... So in that instance, you've got 3 sergeants in those squads now who takes control. It becomes that situation, doesn't it? Where 3 sergeants get together and start going, well, I'm in charge. No, I think you're fine, mate. I've been here longer. It just, again, it works on some level. But I think the easiest solution is the wholly within ruins thing that we talked about. I think that is a good solution.
I quite like the 10 plus or 11 plus. It stops working because that actually changes the meta much more than they both do, but in different ways. I like the idea of large blobs not being able to get auras regardless of how like where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it works either way, because you could have if you're doing wholly within, then you can still have your horde army and spread them out on the board, but you're just not going to benefit from those buffs. But then you can also have, a 20 man squad surrounding, Gilliman, for example, or your character of choice, and they can still be super strong. And weirdly, that probably then creates that more of a sort of Death Star style scenario where they're not spread out, they're really close together because they have to be. And that's what I think their original intention was with that rule, with the auras, because it's thematic. You've got your leader doing like a last stand, got all the troops surrounding him with the banner, and fighting to the last man. And I think that lots of the artwork, like that Crimson Fist artwork, that everyone knows from what edition was that on the cover?
Oh, that was on Rogue Trader.
Oh, was it Rogue Trader? Yes, yeah, exactly. God, going back. So that kind of, I think that's that's almost like the artwork that they imagined when they came up with that rule. Like, that is visually very thematic, and it looks good on the board. When you've got conga lines all over the place on the board, it just doesn't look very nice. It doesn't thematically, it basically breaks the immersion of the game when you see that happening. And you're just like, oh, okay, like, I get why you're doing it, but okay.
Yeah, and that is
not fun way.
That is a really good point to make, though, Phil. It does break the immersion because, and as much as it sounds mad that you get immersed in a game of pushing little toy soldiers around, you really do. You create the stories, and the thing is when you've got, as you said, a bunch of units in a star formation all over the place, it just becomes about moving little toy soldiers around, and the game doesn't start to feel like it's thematically replicating some kind of sci-fi warfare. It just becomes a game, and at that point it loses something. I genuinely believe that. Every time I've lost or played a game, and even won against people using conga line style armies, I don't enjoy myself, and I do not understand how anyone can enjoy playing those armies other than the win at all costs mentality. I literally sat and had a conversation with someone once, actually at the Grand Tournament Finals back in Warhammer Fest in May, and they were literally going off about how they were talking with great glee about the fact that they put an orc model to the front left and an orc model to the front right of a vehicle, and then basically said, "I've locked that in place now, there's no way out." And it was like, what? And he goes, yeah, because if you moved to the left, you'd have to move my model to move it. If you moved it to the right, you'd have to move my model to move it. And you can't do that. You can't move models. And it was like so sort of beardy and gamified. It was like everything about it was like, really?
It sounds like you were talking to the same person that played me, because I played an orc player at the tournament, and he did that exact same mechanic. Although he was quite impressed, because I think it was the first time, or one of the first times, he managed to successfully pull it off, where he locked my hellhounds in combat by, like I said, carefully placing models to like the edges so I couldn't reverse in any way. But then he deliberately didn't pile in any models, so he wouldn't kill me in his combat phase, and basically would then be immune from shooting. And this is a 30-man like mob of orcs that did trail all the way back to his the back of the board edge, where there was a big mech guy with a custom force field. And then as soon as I did, like, I charged in my Death Riders to try and kill some of him so I could free up my tanks. And as soon as he did that, he just used a mob-up stratagem, I think it was, where he could merge another squad into that squad. And then that was basically the game, because he was on a bunch of objectives, and there was no way I could, feasibly shift him off, because I couldn't shoot the majority of his army, because it was all like one big squad that was technically in combat, and it was a bit ridiculous.
And that is why that is a miserable rule set if it creates that situation. Wouldn't you say so, Joe?
Oh, definitely. We've entered into an age where characters are kind of dictating the ebb and flow of the game negatively, and it needs to be fixed.
There you go.
For everyone's sake.
There we are.
Yes. And so, Dan, what is it that you'd like to see changed within the game?
Within the game. Well, my fundamental issue, and we talked about it briefly in last episode, my big fix and what I would like to see changed moving forwards in 40k 8th edition is the whole deployment sequence within matched play. So my frustration with deployment right now is it's too incredibly random. And also as well, even with the introduction of a stratagem for 2 CPs to get cover saves turn 1 for the team going second, or the army going second, I still don't think it's enough. I think the fundamental issues are with deployment is that it's random, it's completely lacking in strategy, beyond some very, very cheaty, unfun mechanics that you can exploit, which I guess I'll talk about in a second. As I say, it has no tactical nuance to it whatsoever. It's random, and sees the initiative makes absolutely no sense whatsoever within the current match play setup process. So, if I was to talk you through the way it works right now, me and Joe in this example will roll off, and Joe will win the roll off, and he'll go, okay, cool, I'm going to place the first objective marker. And he'll do that, and then I'll do it in response, thinking to myself, I'm placing the last objective marker. Therefore, I'm going to be determining what deployment zone is going to work. So if I deploy the objective markers in the, approved kind of L-shaped line thing that gives you the best odds of creating the most shenanigansy setup for objective markers, you can kind of do that whole setup, and then you can go, great, I'm going here, regardless of what you roll on the result, because there's certain setups that work in a certain kind of way that give you really good odds of having huge levels of control over objectives. And again, you could say there's some strategy to that, right? But not necessarily. And then what's the one tangible benefit I, the man who won the dice roll, gets? I get to place the first unit. So immediately my mindset is, I either deep strike something, put something in reserves, to not show my hand. I either put something down, thus indicating to my opponent where certain things are going to start to go, or I try and bluff my opponent by putting something out in a position that's probably not that advantageous, but hoping they sort of go for it. But here's the thing. My army is coming out piece by piece, and their army is coming out piece by piece. So eventually I'm going to have to commit to a strategy some way, shape or form, and my opponent is going to respond to that in kind, right? So I place a thing, they place a thing, I place a thing, they place a thing. Bam. And then we go, cool, I've placed before Joe has. Well done, Joe. You're not getting the +1 this time to the dice roll. Boo-hoo for you. But we roll off, because it's a roll-off. And it doesn't really matter that Joe's got a +1, or rather I've got a +1, because Joe rolls a 5 and I roll a 2. So it's irrelevant what that meant. And then all of a sudden, Joe goes, ha-ha, I'm going to go first. And I go, cool, for no reason at all, I've rolled a 6. And it's like, oh, okay. Do I spend 2 command points and gain cover? Yeah, sure, why not? But that's the whole sequence, right? There's no real thinking about it. Yeah, okay, you could say that there's that ebb and flow as people are placing down units. I don't see it that way. I've never really felt like there's any tactical nuance to that whatsoever. It's literally just blah, 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 go. And then once you go, it's a roll-off followed by a 1 in 6 chance of seizing, which makes no sense when there is no negative associated with rolling to seize. If I roll to seize, in my opinion, I should have some measure of risk associated to that action because the reward is massive. So, reward without the risk is absolutely crazy. And then the only thing that my opponent has to counter if I go first is I get cover saves, which is, as we've kind of acknowledged, all right, not especially brilliant, certainly not something that I think you should be paying 2 CPs for. I think you should be paying 1 if you pay anything at all. But anyway, how would I fix it, I hear you ask? Any questions so far? Have I explained everything correctly, you think?
Yes, I would
So.
say the one thing I don't like about the you go I go deployment is it does seem to really slow the game down. Like as a guard player, especially, I can spend ages just deploying models, even though I probably know exactly where my sort of optimum layout is. And again, because everyone has auras, you pretty much know I'm going to have like a captain here. I'm going to put a banner next to him. I'm going to surround, my intercessor squad next to them. And the only real difference is depending on the terrain, like an angle of fire or what ruin or particular building I want to be next to or objective. So I think the I go you go, it just slows it all down basically.
Yeah.
I prefer the previous editions where you deploy everything and then I can counter it because I'm going second.
Yeah, and I think it really punishes elite armies with a low unit count. So if your army's got like 6 or 7 drops in it of expensive elite units, and your opponent's got 16, 17 drops, they're going to have a massive advantage over you because half their army is going to deploy after you're finished, and they can just line up and kill you.
And there's no real tangible negative to the roll off beyond the +1, but it's a +1, and if you lose that, it's still a 1 in 6 chance, which is still very, very good odds.
Yeah, there's also lots of armies that sort of avoid the sequence of deploying. So Elder and Dark Elder, if I remember rightly, have stratagems where during the game you can sort of redeploy models. So basically, once you've rolled off to see if you're going first or not, you can then, as another player, spend some CP and be like, I'm redeploying this because I'm now going first. So the thing that's hidden out of line of sight, should you go first, I'm now going to whack right on the edge of my deployment so I can charge in with my wave serpents normally straight away, or my venoms. And you're just like, oh, geez. Like, I sort of get thematically, it makes sense that the Elder can do that, but it's quite a punishing mechanic and can be... I don't know. I just haven't been a fan of it when I've been on the receiving end of it.
To be clear, for the Elder, whoever's been doing that to you prior to, or rather in response to going first or second, is cheating you. It happens before you roll off to see who goes first. You have to declare it before the end of your deployment zone.
Is it?
Phase. Yeah. You can't find out whether you're going first or second, then do it, or at least that's how I play it. I actually think, now that I'm saying it out loud, actually the way you're supposed to do it is exactly as you've described it in response to if you're going first or second. But I think that's just so broken that I just wouldn't do it to someone because it's so broken. It's like, why would you do that? It's just crazy. But so my solution to this is as follows. So me and Joe again. We'll roll off. So we'll roll off at the start. The winner of the roll-off chooses to go first or second, right? So that's the first thing. It's not about deploying your objectives straight away and all this kind of crap. It's I'm going first or I'm going second. If they choose to go first, they place the first, third, and fifth objective markers and deploy their whole army first. Now, to be clear, the objective markers are placed by both players. So if I was going first in this instant, place the first, third, and fifth objective markers, the corresponding player is placing the second, the fourth, and the sixth. So I'm not saying you place the first, third, and fifth objective marker and then put your army down. That all kind of happens in sequence. But the point is, I've said I'm going first. Therefore, I can place the first, third, and fifth objective marker, and while I'm doing so, my opponent responds by placing the second, the fourth, and the sixth. So, I place down the objective markers, and then once all that is done, I deploy, or rather the person going first deploys their whole army. The whole army. The whole thing. And then if they choose, if the player who chooses to go second, or rather the player going second, they place, as I said before, the second, fourth, and sixth objective markers, and they are allowed to determine deployment zones, pick their deployment zones, and deploy their whole army second. Then, when it comes to seize the initiative, which is a whole different thing, you can seize the initiative in my envision of the rules, but there are negatives associated. So the ones that I had concocted are probably a little bit harsh, but I'll talk you through them. So you roll a d6 for seize the initiative, right? And seize the initiative has some risk associated. So if you roll a 1, caught off guard, your opponent gets a free movement phase and then begins their turn, right?
Jeez, Dan.
Mate, it's savage.
Not going easy on anyone.
No, because here's the thing. Seizing the initiative is so powerful, there needs to be a huge negative associated to rolling a 1.
Okay, no, I'm willing to listen to this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would personally say make it 1 unit because if you fail that 1 in 6 dice roll, you're essentially giving your opponent 6 inches of the table for free.
Potentially more.
Well, not even that.
Potentially more.
But against like Tower Guard, they'd probably be like, "No, I'm fine, mate. I'm not going to move." So it's useless. So there is no risk against those type of army builds. But if you're against like Tyranids or
sorry, Phil, carry on.
I was going to say if you're against an assault army, that's like brutally risky to do.
But if you know you're going first because you've just seen your opponent roll a 1, you can bring things into range. You can. There are even to Tau. There are advantages because your free movement phase doesn't then affect your preceding turn, so you can move and then you could still fire all your heavy weapons.
Yeah, that's true. You can get on some objectives. You can go like, I'm going to move my Punisher tanks up to be in range because of 4 inches and stuff. Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. So 2 to 3. So if you roll a 2 or a 3, I've called it get to your posts. All your units count as if they'd advanced in this turn and can't move.
But you're going second though, right?
So so you're going second, so you've rolled it. So rather than your opponent getting a free movement phase, everything in your army counts as having advanced and they can't move.
Wow.
Yeah.
But does that also mean all the heavy weapons are -1?
Correct. Well, all heavy weapons can't shoot because you count as advancing.
Oh god damn!
So you're basically
don't like this.
your first movement phase.
Yeah. So the idea is thematically, right? So you're the defending player, is what I'm saying here. Yeah. So you're the defending player. So the idea is you've bunkered into this deployment zone that you've chosen as an area to defend. So the idea here is thematically is you've seen an army coming up on the corner and you've gone shit. Shouldn't have said shit, but I've said it. Pooh. There is an army coming towards us, lads. Get to your posts. And then the idea is they're running to their positions so as they can defend their positions, right? Because they're seeing it on the horizon. So,
wouldn't when you're setting up your army, knowing that you're going second, you would have already positioned your units defensively?
Yes, of course. But this is why what I'm saying is this makes seize the initiative not an auto include in your strategy. This is changing the parameters by which you're considering this rule. Because if you have set up your army in a defensive position, so don't roll it. Just be like, yeah, no, I'm in a defensive position. I'm ready to be defensive. I'm not going to roll this damn thing because I don't want to suffer the negatives. Because the thing is with this is, it's about creating risk. And then 4 to 5 at the ready, your army gets +1 to its saves and can't move. Again, that is kind of like that's like the cover save thing. I'd probably rather than say +1 to the saves, I'd say they get cover saves. But I think actually +1 to their saves is even better because if you're in cover, your 4-up armor save becomes a 2-up save. In this example, if you're already in cover, but you still can't move. You still can't move.
And you still count as having shot.
And no, not in this instance. You're getting +1 save and you can't move. That's a 4 to 5, and a 6 is you have the initiative. You go first. But So this way you actually have to think about it, because all of a sudden, what I'm saying here in terms of a construct, in terms of a rule set is what we're doing here is we're creating a set of parameters whereby you are either an attacker or you are a defender. And if you're in a defender, you choose your deployment zone, you choose your defensive position, and you put your models in preparation for being attacked. And then, if you decide that you want to risk it, and you see an opportunity to seize the initiative, you roll for it because you're aware there is a risk and you're aware of the benefit of your seizing the initiative. As opposed to the current rule, which is, I don't care, roll. It's madness to do it that way.
I think your role idea is interesting and very thematic for a narrative mission, like as a type, because like I said, it's specifically for defenders and attackers. Whereas a lot of match play games, there is no defender. You're both attacking like the same city. You're both trying to reach an objective. There is no defined attacker and defender, because what you're talking about almost is Planet Strike, where one person is bunkered in and the other person is an attacker. Yep. And I think thematically that is too restrictive for a specific type of like narrative mission and not a more general battleground mechanic.
So I suppose what I'm saying here is what I think, even though obviously I accept what you're saying about the Planet Strike mechanic that you're talking about, and you are correct, it is sort of, when you talk about it as attackers and defenders, that's fine. But what I'm saying is what you've constructed here in terms of a deployment and response is, if I'm playing and I'm going first, and I know I'm going first, because I've said I'm going to go first, I'm going to deploy in an aggressive manner. And I'm going to do that because I know I have a stronger understanding of the outcome of the seize the initiative role, right? And I know my opponent is preparing themselves for being defensive. So in this situation, both players have a full and frank understanding of what it is that they are going to be likely to face in the first battle round. I.e., Phil knows he's going second, I know I'm going first in most instances. So you can build a plan around that and you can deploy accordingly. However, in the current game, it's bloody random. It's literally just blah, 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 blah. Let's see what happens. Oh, I've lost because I didn't go first. But you had no way to respond to that. You had no thought process. You had nothing. All you did was go blah, 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 models on the table, roll some dice, see what the result is today. Oh, I didn't get it today. I automatically lose. Brilliant. Because I wasn't prepared for that outcome. I never thought that could be the outcome. Both of us are coming to the table saying, we really need to go first. Everything's about going first. And we build our armies, or rather we build our strategies accordingly. In this instance, the likelihood of Phil setting himself up in a defensive position and saying, I'm going to roll seize the initiative is highly unlikely, because the risk in most instances outweighs the reward. And that creates a situation where the outcome is somewhat understood and you can build a plan around it. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that in response you're not going to move. You just know in turn when you go in second. So you put the guys behind the walls, you put the guys inside the ruins, you put the guys in defensive positions to prepare and respond to what's going to come towards you. Whereas at the moment, you don't do any of that stuff. And that tank that you thought was going to go in turn one and smash stuff up just gets smashed up because of a turn one charge because it didn't go your way. And that's not a fun gameplay scenario. That's just random.
No, I think your concept is sound. I just think your implementation is too punishing. I think if it was on a 1, something bad happens. But on a 2 to 5, nothing happens, and then a 6 is something you get to go first. I think that's fair enough. But the fact that you're getting punished from 2 to 5 or 2 to 4, realistically, you've got some negative effect. And then you roll a 1 is awful. I think there's almost no time where someone would ever want to roll, because if you're an assault army and you want to get that seize, you're not going to take it, because on a roll of anything, you can't move your army even if you can go first. Or if you don't go first, you're not moving in your first turn. And if you're up against a gunline army that's just going to shoot at you, you've just like lost 2 turns of movement effectively.
I agree. And the reason I specifically looked at not moving when I put this together in my brain was because if you're the defending position and you've deployed with that in mind, not moving isn't necessarily going to be something that should be that punishing to you, because realistically you should have been deployed with that in mind, as that's sort of your thing. I admit on a 4 maybe not moving's a bit harsh on a 4+, but I do think, as I say, maybe the whole thing about them getting a free movement phase was probably a bit much as well, right? But what I was trying to do there was illustrate that this rule needs to be evaluated for its merits. And to be fair, even if they just, you know what a quick fix is to the current deployment system? Just get rid of Seize the Initiative. Just get rid of it, right? Do a roll-off, abide by the results. The process of I roll off, you roll off, and then I roll again if I lost the initial roll-off, and I got a 6, is stupid. Don't do it, because it has no place within that sequence. It doesn't make any sense. When you play someone who doesn't play a lot of 40k, and you do the whole match play setup, and you say, right, okay, cool, so I've won the initial roll-off, so I'll place the objectives, and you've done yours, and you'll place your objectives, and then we do deployment zones, and then your armies come down, and now let's see who goes first. Poof. Oh, I lost the result, but on a 6 I seize. Again, it's like that game you used to play as a kid, and maybe I only played this game as a kid, but most people I talk to know about these ridiculous make-believe games you play as kids in playgrounds, where you start making up fantastic weapons that can break through certain things, and you go, you can't attack me because I've got a certain shield, and then they go, but my sword goes through your shield, and then you go, no, my shield is impervious to your sword. Did anyone else do this?
No.
Oh, Jesus.
No, I didn't have any friends.
Fine, you didn't have any friends, thank God. Well, there you go, you're making up for lost time, AJ. Anyway.
I'm starting to feel like you've been seized on one too many times, and you've just cracked and gone mad.
Look, I just think it's too powerful.
Yeah, I agree that it should go back to the old ways of you both roll off at the start, and he who rolls highest goes first for deploying objectives and determining deployment zone, because I think at the moment there's far too many dice being rolled before the game's even started. I like the idea that the person who's going first deploys first, and then the person who goes second deploys second, because you can counter what your opponent's done. But I think you could keep Seize the Initiative in, but you can either roll to seize the initiative, because if you've got an assault army and you need to go first, you're going to want to roll it, or the other option is you don't roll and then you take the free cover save, like we currently get 2 command points for. So you can say, my army is defensive, I'm going to opt to stay in a defensive stance and get the cover, or you're going to be like, no, I got to get up the table, I'm going to roll and try and seize on you.
Do you think maybe you could change it to a 1 CP stratagem where you roll to seize the initiative for seizing the initiative, and if you fail on a 5+, if you fail it, so if you get a result 1 to 4, you automatically give your opponent cover saves in the first turn? Would that be an option?
What, that you give the person that's going first the cover save?
No. So if you want to roll to seize the initiative, it's a 1 CP stratagem. And if you fail it, they get the cover save. I don't think that's really fair, actually, in that situation, because that's double bubble, isn't it?
I think
maybe just it should be 1 command point to roll to seize.
I like just giving them the cover save for free if they elect not to roll. I think that's a really good trade-off.
Yeah.
I mean, you could still have it so you can roll to seed, but then it costs you 2 CP, 2 CP for the cover stratagem, or you elect not to roll and in effect save yourself 2 CP and you get it for free.
Yeah, because that makes things like guard armies who know they're going second can put into their strategy, put into their deployment goal in mind, that I am going to take this extra cover and weather the storm for my opponents and then retaliate.
Do you think in that case it should be anything not in cover gets a cover save or +1 to their armor save, so therefore you could effectively double up?
If it's not, I like the idea that if it's not in cover, it gets a cover save. Like they've got camo netting, or they've put up some sandbags somewhere. I think +1 to their cover save for everyone is a bit too powerful.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it means that Space Marines then get a 1-up save in cover, which is useful, but is too powerful.
Yeah. I think, I think that sort of thing what you were saying there is choose to you roll it for one, roll it or don't roll it, and if you don't roll it, you get the thing is quite good. Or I think I phrased what I was saying earlier about you paying 1 CP slightly wrong. So what I meant to say is you pay 1 CP to roll Cs. If you don't get it, you don't get to. Maybe it's a case if you don't get it, you get the cover save or so. I don't know. There's got to be a way around it. There has to be a better way of constructing it so far. But my overriding issue with the game as it stands when it comes to deployment is the sequence at the moment is crazy. And if I go back to that stupid example I was talking about with the kids and the shields and the swords and the stuff, it just at the moment when you play the game and you say to someone, roll these dice, and that person wins the roll off, and then you pick up the dice and go, oh, I got another roll on a 6, I'm the best. It's literally like that ridiculous exchange between kids where they're trying to one-up each other. It just seems stupid. It seems cheaty. It's the sort of rule that if someone does that to you the first time you play the game, you go, really? Why? Because I won the roll off. You get to roll some extra dice. Is that really the rules? It just doesn't sound like a rule. It doesn't sound like something that should be in the game. It sounds stupid. And it is stupid. The whole sequence is bizarre because it's literally roll off against each other. If you don't like the result, roll again. And if you get a 6, oh, well, forget about it. You get to go first now. It's just weird. It doesn't make sense to me in its current form, as well as all the other things. And I like the idea of deploying whole armies, and I like the idea of creating a situation where we know whether you're going to go first or second, because you can do tactical things with that. You know, you might actually want to go second, right? You might want to have a situation with Phil where he's got a gunline army where he goes, I actually want to go second. I want you to come to me. I want to have you walk onto my guns turn 1 and get shot to pieces. That's what I want. But anyway, there you go. That's my thing. Phil, it seems like we talked about this for ages, but come on now. What would you change?
What would I change? My original one, we were going to be talking about aura bubbles, but I think we've covered that in Joe's one. So mine's going to be a minor nitpick, and that is I would like weapon skill to not be a fixed 4-up or 5-up, whatever it is, and that it is now similar to how strength and toughness works. So I don't want it to go back to the old crazy weapon skill table, but I would like it to be, if I'm weapon skill 4 and you're weapon skill 4, because we're equal, we roll a 4-up, and if I'm higher, I roll a 3-up. If I'm lower, I need a 5-up, and if it's doubles, it's 2s or 6s, and that way there's a bit more nuance in the in combats.
Is this specifically because your Krieg in the olden days used to be more useful because they were weapon skill 4?
That is exactly it. It is a completely selfish reason. Because Krieg used to be weapon skill 4, they were so much more survivable in combat. The Marines would charge in, but instead of hitting on 3s, I'd be hitting on 4s, so I could weather the storm a bit. And then instead of me hitting on 5s, I'm hitting on 4s instead, which was so much better. Now I'm just hitting on 4s, which is fine. But I'm just going to get murdered in the close combat phase. But it would be nice to see that like throughout in terms of, Gilliman smashing down some guardsmen or some grots, for example. But the grots are hitting on, I guess they hit on 5s. Maybe they hit on 6s. But it should be 6s anyway, like regardless, because it's so good. I just think it would add a bit more back to the game. It would slow it down. I completely admit that. Yeah, so
I don't
like
think it would though, because I think, as was the case in 7th edition, 6th edition, so on and so forth, you got used to it. You understood it. It's not like if you say your weapon strength 4 and I'm toughness 4, I immediately know what that is. And I think that logic still applies. And I do agree with you. I think it is crazy that a Space Marine, or let's say Space Marine, is able to hit Lilith from the Dark Elder on a 3+. That's crazy. Like, you're talking about a character who within the lore doesn't go into battle wearing armor because she's so nimble and so agile. She's dodging all these attacks, and obviously that is personified within a 3+ invulnerable save. But it also used to be personified by a weapon skill. I think she used to be weapon skill 9. Joe, you played a lot of Lilith. Was she weapon skill 9 or 8?
She was weapon skill. She was weapon skill 8, initiative 9.
Ah, that was it.
So nothing in the game ever struck before she did.
Was an Avatar initiative 10? Oh no, he was weapon skill 10. Was he initiative 10 as well? I feel like he was initiative 10 as well. Maybe not. No, I think he was initiative 6.
Were 10s across the board.
Who's that? Who was 10s across the board?
One of the greater demons.
Probably the Khorne one.
Yeah.
But
so apart from a gigantic Khorne demon, she was pretty
the
bad.
fourth ones were the ones that were pretty much all across.
And Jane Zar charging.
Yeah,
she was initiative 10 on the charge, Jane Zar. But yeah, only on the charge though. Or if you charged her as well, potentially. I think it was first round of combat. But there you go. Other than Jane Zar and a big demon and normal banshees and an Ultark in a banshee mask. It was.
What's always saying is other Eldar stuff.
Yeah, other Elder stuff. But no, Lilith, because she was like weapon skill 8, say. So if a Space Marine captain who was weapon skill 5 came up against her, he was hitting her on 5s, which was perfectly reasonable because you're like, yeah, you should be hitting her on 5s. She's an absolute monster.
But now he gets to attack first and hit her on 2s.
Yeah. Which is, in my opinion, crazy because it doesn't reflect skill, and it also removes that elite element from the game. Because it used to be like you used to have things like incubi units, to use another Dark Elder example, who were initiative 6 or initiative 5.
They were.
I think they were initiative 5, but anyway. So they went first. They had the power blades. They were strength 4. They were weapon skill 5. They were solid, right? Like you charged into those guys, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna cut you up. Whereas the thing is, with now, it's like you charge into a unit of incubi. It's like, well, I go first just because. Oh, okay, well, I'm way more skilled with blades than you are. Oh yeah, but I still hit on 2s because. It's like, nah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre that when Conor McGregor fought against Khabib a couple of weekends ago, the skill of both fighters came into effect, and Khabib mauled him. Spoilers, if no one's watched that. But, it was a thing that happened based on the skill of the two individuals. And, within 40k currently, none of that's really taken into account. So, yeah, I'm with you, Phil.
My thoughts.
Oh, go on, Joe.
My thoughts also, the size of the unit should come into effect. Because, say for instance, you've got, I don't know, a Space Marine captain who's got a relatively large base, and he is surrounded by a mob of 30 orc boys. Those orc boys that surround him, that are within 1 inch of one that's in base contact of him, is like 10, 12 models, maybe more. And each one of them gets their full complement of attacks and hits on 3. Like, I'm no martial artist or combat veteran, but I would imagine if there was someone in front of me on my side, they would make it a lot harder for me to hit our target. Like, I'd maybe get a hit in with a long stick.
I don't know. If you look at like the Romans and like people doing like shield wall formations and spears, they were like drilled into efficiency. The guys at the front were just holding a shield, and the people behind were had the spears and was stabbing them over the shield. So I could see an argument for
not really comparable though.
Yeah,
not particularly with orcs, but any trained military force such as guard.
Most of those forces are normally small units.
Yeah. Also, as well.
True.
Also, as well, you're talking about very specific type of unit with a very specific set of criteria when you talk about the Roman centurion or whatever it was, because they're built around that kind of shield and spear combination. Nothing in 40k is shield and spear other than the Terminator chapter master for the Minotaurs and maybe, if I remember something else, you could argue maybe there's a Custodes that does that. I don't know. Any other shield and spear units in the entire game? I can't think of any.
No.
Other than that Minotaur, who is basically fashioned on the old Roman centurion things anyway. But yeah, I think Joe's point is quite relevant though, right? It's like almost a case of maybe if you're within one, you should just add one attack, but then again it's about the elegant solution of it. It's about the literal translation of what's happening in front of you versus the kind of more fantastic fantasy replication of warfare stuff. But I think, as Joseph was saying, actually it's probably more realistic that this mob of 10 orcs wouldn't all get their hits in. But again, I'm not so worried about that. I just think at the end of the day, orcs used to be weapon skill free. Right, they used to be weapon skill free, and they used to be toughness 4 and strength 3. And when they charged in, they got a buff to their strength to become strength 4, so they had furious charge. They used to have a buff to their initiative as well for furious charge, but they changed that in 7th edition just to buff their strength. So they became strength 4, and they hit on 4s, but they were just maybe they were weapon skill 4. But anyway, the point being is that lots of them, but if they still came up against Lilith, they were still hitting her on 5s, and I think that's the thing. It's like there's no relationship to the person that they're attacking, and I think that is a big issue because it massively impacts the way that combat works and the way that elite characters work and the way that elites work in this game in general. I think the overarching thing I take away from all of our points, bar my ridiculous seize the initiative rant, is that this game doesn't support elite units. There's no mechanics or things within this game that make units like Terminators, Custody Guard, Incubi, Striking Scorpions, Fire Dragons. None of this stuff is good in 8th edition because it's too expensive and too elite, and it doesn't have mechanics like initiative and weapon skill versus weapon skill created a dynamic where elite units were actually something above the standard, rank and file model. But now it's literally a case of, it doesn't matter. Just run in and everything's the same for everybody. So, that's my feelings on it.
Welcome back, guys. The next section, we're going to be talking about our not least favourite units, but we've each picked a unit or two that we don't think performs very well in the current edition, and we're going to contemplate how we can fix it. So as I've introduced this section, I'm going to go first. And I'm cheating slightly because I'm going to be talking about the index army, or index units, should I say, from the Imperial armour, because obviously I'm a Krieg player. That's where everything comes from. So I'm mostly talking about units for selfish reasons, to be purely indulgent. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the Medusa. It comes in 2 formats. You can either take it as a carriage, battery, or the Armageddon pattern tank. They both do the exact same thing, but in comparison to the Basilisk, they just don't do it well enough. So the Basilisk, just to remind people, has a range of 240 inches. It's a heavy D6. 240 inches when you need to hit someone on the other side of the room. It's a heavy D6, strength 9. It was in the index -2, but then got FAQ'd to be -3, which is how it appears in the Astra Militarum Codex, and is D3 damage. But the key thing that makes it really good is when you're rolling the heavy D6, you roll 2 and you pick the highest. You can also attack out of line of sight, which is always good.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. Now let's look at the Medusa version. So there's two types of shells. If you're the carriage battery, which is in how it reflects in the old 6th and 7th edition, you basically had standard shells and breacher shells. The breacher shells were always much better at taking out buildings and tanks. The Armageddon pattern tank can't take those two varieties. It's just the carriage battery, which is like the static siege gun that the Kriegers have. So the standard shell is 36 inches, so pretty short. It's heavy D6, strength 10, so it's slightly higher strength, -3 AP, which is now exactly the same as the Basilisk AP, and D3 damage, and it can fire not needing line of sight. So in comparison, it's not very good. But let me quickly go through the breacher shells, which is 48 inches, so it's slightly longer. Again, heavy D6, strength 10, -3 D3 damage. That's exactly the same. But when attacking a building, increase the weapons damage characteristic to D6. And when was the last time any of us saw a building on the tabletop?
Well, I mean, I've seen lots of them counted as ruins, but hardly ever seen anyone. Well, actually, there was one point early doors where people were taking that ridiculous plasma battery thing and filling it with Dark Reapers. So I have seen that early doors, but other than that, no, I've not seen anything.
So it's a very niche market tank.
It's such a niche market thing. So weirdly, it's like, so the Medusa's role was purely like it's like a dedicated anti-tank gun. And I kind of like that. I like that they've sort of bought the not needing line of sight depending on one of the shells. That was kind of cool because they had lost that in 7th edition and 6th edition. But the difference between the Basilisk and the Medusa is so slim now, there's no reason why you would just not go for a Basilisk, because the rolling 2 dice for the number of attacks and picking the highest is like such a benefit over going from strength 9 to strength 10.
I mean, in real terms, increasing your strength from 9 to 10 is so marginal an improvement in this edition. It's unreal.
Well, it only benefits you when you're attacking toughness 5 units.
Yeah.
And if you're attacking toughness 5 units with a Medusa gun, you're shooting at the wrong thing because it's really meant to be taking out tanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that respect, strength 9 is optimal because it's higher strength than almost every variant of tank out there, with maybe the exception of some variant of Forge World thing, maybe the Mastodon's toughness 9. I don't know, but I'm assuming something like that could be. But beyond that, I mean, having a strength of 10 is not a big deal in this edition, and it's certainly not something to get overly excited about.
I mean, if you made it strength 12, at least, you can. Toughness 6 stuff is a bit more interesting to shoot at with this gun, because then you're more likely to be in the sort of multi-wound. I mean, toughness 5 is probably going to be multi-wound anyway, but toughness 6 is like sort of light vehicles potentially, as well as like monsters and stuff like that.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Strength 10, all of a sudden you can be like, oh, I'm wounding on 2s against all those people taking Centurions, or aren't Interceptors toughness 5, Joe?
I'm pretty sure they are.
So Interceptors, Centurions, Harlequin transports are toughness 5 as well, I think. The little venomy things, whatever they're called. So you got some options, but not enough
I mean, the way I would fix it is, so it says when attacking a building, increase its damage to D6. Now, if that was vehicles and buildings, then I would be like, oh, now we're talking. So it's D6 shots and D6 damage. That's quite a rare thing in this game. I would much rather prefer that, because then it does become a dedicated anti-tank role. You've still got the trade-off of it's 48 inches in comparison to 120, and the trade-off of it's only a single D6 for the number of attacks versus 2D6, which is more consistent. But the D6 would be much better.
Would you choose D6 over a flat 3?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think I'd prefer D6. I sort of
Yeah.
like the risk reward element to it. I mean, stuff that is flat free tends to be pretty devastating. Is it like the Helverins flat free?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe flat free would also be quite
How
good.
many points is it put on the table?
Oh, you're asking me something I don't know the answer
If you
to.
compare it to points-wise to a Helverin, you take a Helverin every time.
Yeah.
Or like the Onaga Dune Crawler, for instance, is a dedicated anti-tank tank, basically. And
So
one of
the Medusa carriage battery is 100 points. It used to be 80, but then they upped it to 100. But then you've got to take at least 4 crew, which are 4 points each. So you're sort of looking around the like 100 and, I don't know, 14, 13 mark.
and the wheeled version.
Oh, sorry, that is the wheeled version. Let's find the Armageddon pattern one is 115.
Mhm.
But that one bizarrely can't take the breacher shells, which it should, because it always used to.
That's a bit. Yeah, if it was more dedicated anti-tank, so it was D6 damage, or like some other anti-tank weapons is D6, but anything less than a 3 is a 3. Because when you've got a dedicated anti-tank weapon that's doing 1 to 2 damage, it's pointless when you're shooting at a tank that's got 14 wounds.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There are some in the game that have like a minimum damage, and it seems like it's so few and far between. And it feels like it's something they probably only, I could be wrong, only introduced in the codexes. So all the index stuff, because pretty much everything in the index was like D3 or D6. There was like, or a flat 1 or 2. So if it was, D6, but always a minimum of 3, that would be fantastic.
If you ran the Medusa as is it Catachan, so then it'd be able to roll 2d6 and pick the highest.
Yes, yeah. You could still do it that way.
But you wouldn't do it that way because you'd be
No.
running it as Krieg.
Of course I would. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Which
As is only
has
right.
a regimental special rule that would not affect the carriages in any way whatsoever.
Well, useful. Are the
That
carriages
sounds
even
slightly
classed
bitter
as
there.
tanks?
Yes, because they have the vehicle keywords.
Oh, okay. But do they have the tank keyword? Is that even a
No,
keyword?
they
now?
don't. No. I
But
think
they're still a
tank
vehicle.
is a keyword. Oh, well, actually.
There's a
Tank-
question.
No, there's not. I don't think there's a tank keyword. There's a vehicle keyword instead.
Well, I mean, the carriage
yes,
variant of it
something.
looks incredible, though, right? I mean, what a beautiful model.
Oh, that's the only reason to take it.
Yeah. And, the 15 points discount minus crew, which obviously brings you up to actually more expensive than the tank variant, right?
Yes, and it can't move as well, remember.
Oh, it can't move either.
Well, because it's immobile. You can.
But it's got wheels on it. How did it get...
Well, if you have the Centaur artillery tractor, you can then move them.
There you go.
And-
How much
and
is
then
a
if you do that-
Centaur tractor these days?
I think it's like 75 or 85 points. And if you do a move, you can move I think it's like 10 or 12 inches, but you can't then fire that turn that you've moved.
There's a lot of caveats on this thing here. But yet you're telling me for 15 points more I can take it as a tank with half the issues.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's completely ballsed up that pointing system,
Well,
haven't they?
the reason why was when the game first came out, everyone was taking the Basilisk carriage version and the Basilisk platform that has no crew because they were dirt cheap in comparison to the Basilisk tank. And then it got FAQ'd, so the Basilisk tank is now the best option because it's slightly cheaper. It can still move. It has a heavy bolter. The others are sort of interesting. They don't have as many wounds, or I think it's higher toughness, but they don't degrade, which is kind of cool. And the immobile version can still shoot, even though it's in close combat with someone, which is kind of cool.
So in essence, you want to see its damage increased when it's attacking a vehicle or a building.
Yeah, because what at the moment is it's almost exactly the same as a basilisk, but there's no reason to ever take the Medusa over the basilisk. But if you then said it does D6 damage over against a vehicle or a building, then there's a real reason to take that over a basilisk, because the basilisk is versatile and a bit more broad in terms of the target, who it can target and who it can damage. But it's going to have the damage output as a Medusa, which is a dedicated anti-tank gun.
Gotcha. That
And
sounds
then
reasonable.
what's better, Medusa or a Vanquisher?
Well, that's another unit, again, that probably needs tweaking, because that is a single-shot gun, shooting twice with the grinding advance rule. But again, it does D6 damage at least. Like, that is an anti-tank gun, but its number of shots is woefully low. And I would say that's something that also needs to be upped in number. So, not necessarily 2 shots, but I don't know, maybe 3 shots or something. It needs, because you're likely to only hit half the time, you need more shots to make up for it. Or
2d3 damage, because then it's consistently doing 2 damage instead of 1.
Not necessarily 2d6, but yeah, it needs to be a higher damage output for that to represent the fact that it is so few shots.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. Joe, at some point you were going to make a comparison to the Dune Crawler, but then you got distracted. Did you still want to make that point?
So I kind of made it anyway. The Dune Crawler is roughly around the same amount of points. And
is that this the neutron laser one, which is
the neutron laser is
crazy good.
I'll get the book. It's right next to me. I skipped way past it already.
Because I think you're right. That does a minimum of 3 damage.
Yeah, it's the neutron lasers, heavy D3, strength 10, -4, D6 damage, and treat any roll of a 1 or a 2 as a 3.
I'll take that.
How many points is that coming out? 100, is it?
It's not. That's a little bit more than 100.
But has it got extra guns as well?
You can give it extra guns. It doesn't come with them standard, so you can give it like a orbital relay thing or whatever it's called. So you can cover it in like missiles and.
With the neutron laser and the Cognos heavy stubber,
This one
is 140 points,
Okay.
and it's BS3, whereas your tank is BS4.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
what's the range of that though?
48 inches.
Oh, so it's similar.
got the relative ability of the catacombs thing, isn't it, as well? So you can you can benefit from the
The
catacombs.
canticles.
It's got the canticles. It's got a
Canticles, sorry.
5-up invuln save.
An invuln save.
And if there's another, and then you can re-roll invulnerable saving throws of 1 for any Onaga Dune Crawl within 6 inches of at least another Onaga Dune Crawler.
Yeah, they're pretty universally useful, and they're very cost effective for what they do. They've always been a very interesting unit for sure when it comes to the anti-tank stuff. So yeah, that's interesting though. I think you're right. I think it's kind of like it's like Imperial Fists. Imperial Fists have we can reroll wounds against buildings. It's like great. It's just whenever I see a building, I'm gonna get so excited.
See, if they just said vehicle keyword, like buildings have the vehicle keyword on them, bizarrely. I'm not quite sure why, but I think it's due to the embark rule. But if they just said vehicles, it's a bit more useful, but also still includes buildings as well.
Totally agree.
That's all there needs to be.
Boom. Should we move on to the next unit that people want to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to talk about a second one, but I think we went into that one in a bit too much detail. So, Joe, let's do you next.
I want to talk about the humble Chaos Space Marine, the unloved and the unused. Because if you look at any Chaos Space Marine army, be it Thousand Suns, Death Guard, or normal Codex Space Marines, Chaos Space Marine, there are no Chaos Space Marines in those armies.
Well,
it is always cultists or vehicles.
Or berserkers.
Or, yeah.
All the Thousand Sun guys, you see them quite a
Yeah,
bit.
you see a lot of the old, what are they even called now? Oh, those Marines. What are they called? Rubik Marines, that was the
Thousands
word.
Rubik means that's
Rubik.
Rubik Marines, yes.
But they themselves are not a standard Chaos Space Marine.
Oh,
No,
no, not at
yeah.
all. Do they even get access to Chaos Space Marines, though, in Thousand Suns?
I don't think so.
No, they
They
just
might.
get Rubik Marines. Same thing with Death Guard, right? They just get Death Guard.
Yeah.
But most Death Guard players don't really run Death Guard Marines.
No, it's true.
They
They just won't.
run Poxwalkers.
Yeah, true. It's almost like the game doesn't benefit elite style units at all, and it's all about Horde.
The thing is, you can run. The thing I like about Chaos Space Marines is that you can run them in units of 20, which is brilliant. Because that's a huge amount of fire output. They're toughness 4, which means most things in the game are wounding them on 5s because everyone uses Horde units that tend to be strength 3. And most of the Chaos, what they're called, Legion tactics are actually half decent.
So what you're actually saying, Joe, rather than talking about... You've clearly missed the point here. You were supposed to be talking about things that you thought were bad and how you would improve them.
Well, they are bad. Because,
But you just said how much you like them.
I like them, but they are bad because they're overcosted.
Are they? They're
And-
13 points a model.
But it's not cost efficient when there's better options in the book.
But because I will put it to you that a Chaos Space Marine is better than a Tactical Marine.
Why is that though?
Well, because a Tactical Marine is a point more expensive. It has less options than a Chaos Space Marine. And gone are the days where drop pods were any good. So their tactical flexibility has been rendered relatively moot. So the only thing a regular Space Marine has over a Chaos Space Marine is that it has different weapons, but grav cannons are terrible now. Grav guns are terrible now. So really, they have all the same stuff except Chaos Space Marines.
Better options for getting around the table. They got better options for getting around the table.
What, Tactical Marines?
Yeah, they got Razorbacks.
Okay, right.
Falcons, Ravens.
Storm Ravens.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's not the squad individually, though, is it? It's
Yeah, but they've got more versatility. Chaos Space Marines are just a blunt force unit, really.
You can use a Land Raider to move them around. You can move a Rhino. You could use a... trying to think now. You can use your Alpha Legion stratagem to have them move 9 inches before the game starts.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
I'm sorry. Don't come back to me with logic. The thing is, they're both bad, aren't they? Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines. But the thing is with Chaos Space Marines is it's a little less blatant because there's not Primaris Marines in their book. They don't have to compare themselves. Because for me, the issue is with a Space Marine, first and foremost, is its bolt gun. I have no earthly idea how a Primaris bolt gun, which for all intents and purposes fires the same basic ammunition, although be it through a longer barrel, as a regular Space Marine. But you're going, oh yeah, it's -1 when a Primaris Marine shoots it, but when your regular lad shoots it at 24 inches rather than 30 inches, it's not -1. Why? We just want to sell you Primaris Marines. And that's... I don't understand why a bolt gun isn't -1. That confuses me massively. I would totally give a Space Marine -1 bolt guns.
Did it used to be -1 in previous editions?
It used to be AP5.
So that was the thing. Yeah, I keep forgetting that the AP has sort of changed.
Yeah. Which meant that
but
guardsmen
now
didn't get
same
saves
AP
against it.
as a guardsman.
Yeah. It meant a guardsman didn't get a save against it. It meant cultists didn't get a save against it. It meant that pathfinders didn't get saves against it. It meant that guardians, gaunts, loads of stuff didn't get saves against that. Loads of horde-y things didn't get saves against bolt guns in the olden days.
But then imagine a bolt gun with -1 shooting at a tank like a Lehman Russ, for example. I don't know why I think that. And then they're saving on fours. It's like I can sort of get the logic of
Yeah, but in the previous rules edition, though, a bolt gun shooting at a tank did sweet FA because it was strength 4 against front armor 12. The only time you'd ever be able to hurt it was in the rear.
Yeah. And admittedly, even in the rear against the Lehman Russ, it couldn't do anything because the Lehman Russ was armor 11 in the back, wasn't it?
Only certain types. I think the Demolisher variant and one of the others had, a slightly higher rear armor value.
But the point is that Primaris Marines have got -1. So for the same series of criteria, I believe a Tactical Marine or a Chaos Space Marine should have -1 on a bolt gun because it's still the same fundamental weapon, just a shorter range.
Is it though? Like, surely the Primaris guns fire different ammunition. That is why.
Primaris Marines also get a longer range, and they have variable ammunition options depending on which bolt gun that you buy them.
Yeah, because you can give them the heavy variant, which is 36-inch range, one shot, I want to say, and that's still -1. And then there's the assault variant, which is range 24.
There's assault 2.
Assault 2, but has no minus modifiers. And then there's the one that everyone uses, which is range 30 -1. Because that's the best variant, and it doesn't cost you any points to give it to them. And that's the thing. What I'm saying is, a Primaris Marine is 19 points, and is twice as good than a Tactical Marine. And a Tactical Marine is 14 points, so there's 5 points in it. But for the 5 points, it gets +1 wound, +1 attack, +6 range, and -1 AP. That is madness. Right?
Yeah.
They need to address that. So in that respect, if I was looking at Space Marines, I would say Chaos and regular, they need a -1 AP for their guns, 100%.
Yeah.
Do you think, not to go down the conspiracy route, put on our tinfoil hats, they're sort of deliberately making Primaris better because Primaris realistically encompass what the Space Marines were originally meant to be? But because Space Marines are sort of now the everyman unit, they're like the baseline that the game runs at, which is why they sort of have to have, no AP at the moment. Whereas Primaris are like the better than average. They are the elites.
I agree with that statement 100%. I think the game has been made with... If the game has been made with Space Marines as the baseline, they've mucked it up because Space Marines should never really be your baseline, right?
It should be Guardsmen, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Primaris Marines sort of personify what a Space Marine should be in relation to like a Guardsman or whatever it is. But the thing is with that conundrum is in the old game systems, a Space Marine still had moments where it shone. It still had times where it could offload 20 shots at 12-inch range into a unit of Calabite warriors, or however you pronounce it, the Dark Elder, warrior unit, and kill them all because it was AP5 and they were in the open, right? There were moments where an AP5 bolt gun meant something. Orc units, all the stuff that I said before.
Back in the day, they used to have Rhino Rush. And basically you'd plough forward with the rhinos and block everything off. But then each of those rhinos had 10 Space Marines that would just get out and gun everyone down. Whereas now, you can still use your rhinos to tie people up in combat, but the Space Marines get out and don't do anything because they're not that great at shooting against most things, and then they're even worse in combat.
Oh, they're terrible in combat. One attack, hitting on freeze, no minus AP, awful. And again, I completely agree with you, Joe. If you actually want to talk about it, so I will, as I said before, Chaos Space Marines are marginally better than regular Space Marines because they're cheaper, and they've got icons which normal Space Marines don't have access to. So the icon of Wrath, the ability to reroll your charges, the icon of Excess and so on and so forth. These are all, useful buffs to the units. And they're relatively inexpensive. I think the Icon of Wrath coming in at 10 points, and then I think Excess is 5, and so on and so forth, carrying on down the line. But, they never exceed 10 points for a relatively useful buff. But they're still bad. It's that thing where, I mean...
Like with Primaris means, the Chaos Codex, has the better option of cultists. You can get, 10, you get 15 cultists, 20 cultists for the same price as 5 Chaos Space Marines.
So 5 Chaos Space Marines is, in my humble estimation, 65 points, maybe 60 points.
You get 15 cultists, which within the Chaos Codex are way better.
Yeah. Well, within the game, because again, the game doesn't favour the more elite unit; it favours the horde.
Yeah. Because within the Codex and within the game, those cultists, which are normally hitting on 4s, you cast a psychic power on them, they're hitting on 3s. You can then put the stratagem Veterans of the Long War on them, which means that they're hitting those Space Marines on 4s. And why cultists can become Veterans of the Long War, I don't know.
Because surely they've not been around long enough.
Well, exactly.
They've got to be around for 10,000 years to kind of qualify for it. And then you can endless cacophony them, so they shoot twice. So that 15-man unit hits on 3s, wounds on 4s, and puts out 60 rounds.
And then shoots again.
Or puts out 30 rounds and then shoots again to create 60.
I think that's a similar thing, with guardsmen, with orders, you're within 12 inches, so you're within rapid fire range, you're normally hitting twice. But with, I think, fire, you can, up your rapid fire to rapid fire 2, so you're shooting 4 times. So a 10-man squad is doing 40 shots. And it's those kind of buffs or abilities, even though that's not an aura ability, it's just like a general order. It's like you can easily not outshoot a Space Marine unit, but you can give them a run for their money, and they're vastly cheaper.
So beyond giving them the same -1 AP that they gave Primaris Marines, what else would you give a Chaos Space Marine unit to make them better, Joe?
I should bolt guns Assault 2.
Oh, really? You'd actually change them to Assault 2 rather than Rapid Fire?
What, as well as -1, or instead of -1?
Well, I'd say it's one of those either-ors. Because if you make their gun Assault 2, they're just way more efficient.
Then you wouldn't need the -1, I would have thought.
With -1 because your fire output's increased. And it means that you can hold them back and hold objectives, or you can keep moving and keep up a steady rate of fire. Because a unit firing 10 bolt gun rounds is awful. And even with the -1, you're going to shoot 10 rounds, you're going to hit 7 times, and you're going to wound 5 times, kind of thing. And yeah, the -1's great, but if you're putting out 20 rounds, then the chances are greatly improved.
There you go. No, I mean it's a very good opportunity. I think as well. The other thing that Chaos Space Marines have over and above a tactical marine is that you can also load them out with a chainsword and a bolt pistol as well, which is also useful because that's something you can't do with a tactical marine squad either. So yeah, but yeah, I think for me, I don't know what I would do with Space Marines to make it better. I'd definitely give them the -1 AP, and I'd probably think about. I'd probably think about some kind of mechanic that reflects their age and experience. So maybe Primaris Marines should have 1 less leadership, for example, than they do. Maybe they should, maybe something should reflect their ability in terms of their years of service. Because even even the novice, because the thing that I'm not, and again, I don't know if any one of you guys have read up on this or know anything about this. Primaris Marines don't come from scouts, right? They just appear as Primaris Marines.
So they've been developed and vat grown over like 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And then implanted with combat doctrine and training. And then they've done a lot of their training. Oh, I can't remember where Belisarius builds them.
Well, it'd be Mars.
It might be Mars. And then they're instantly put into their armor and sent out.
Yeah, so there needs to be something that reflects that difference of training regime and honor and whatever, like honor for the chapter or something, where it's literally a case of, you know, they carry the history and the legacy of the tradition of their chapter with them, and it's reflected in some way in their rules. I don't know how that would work necessarily.
I'm
pretty
sure there was talk, at least by the Warhammer community team, when the game first came out. And I don't know if this is reflecting the law, but I'm pretty sure they were saying that a regular Marine can be turned into a Primaris Marine.
Yeah, that was referenced.
Happened, or at least it's not happened with major characters on the tabletop yet.
Yeah, that has been referenced, but it's not something I've read or heard about in the established lore of it. It's like the clone army from Clone Wars in Star Wars. It's literally just, here they come, the MacGuffin that saves the day. It's very bizarre how Primaris Marines work in relation to that, but then also, so, and again, even how those things are indoctrinated, right? So if you've got intercessors, and intercessors are all about shooting at range, they won't, a tactical Marine is actually supposed to emphasize the perfection of the Space Marine kind of class. It's been a Devastator, it's been an Assault Marine, it's been a Scout, it's been all these things, and it's become a tactical Marine because of its tactical nuance and ability and skill. Like, a Space Marine doesn't live long to become a tactical Marine unless they're bloody good at what they do. And I feel like they should be representatively better than a Primaris Marine in fluff terms, other than the fact that the Primaris Marines are taller, are stronger, and, whatever. But there should be something in there that makes these guys better from a fluff perspective. But they're not going to do that because they just want you to buy Primaris Marines. And again, if I refer back to when I was listening to the Dark Imperium book, the entire book was an ad for Primaris Marines, and the book went like this. The Primaris Marine walked into the room. He was bigger, taller, smarter, better. He was better. He was better than a regular Marine. Have we mentioned this already 60 times, this book? Primaris Marines are better. Go buy them. It was literally mental. But anyway, I transgress. It's transgress. Can't speak. But anyway, my point is I don't get it. I would do something, but I don't know what.
Speaking of which, what would your unit of choice be to change?
So I would change Terminators. Again, I have been woefully disappointed with the Terminators since 6th edition. In 5th edition, the Assault Terminator squad was the squad of 5th edition. The Assault Terminator with Thunderhammer Storm Shield was terrifying, and rightly so, because it's one of the most iconic units in Warhammer 40,000, and long should it remain so. I do not like the fact that you don't see Terminators anymore, other than the rare captain that just happened to have some points spare, so we chucked him in Terminator armor, because Terminators are, in my humble estimation, much better than what they are represented as on the tabletop. The game has not done a good enough job of translating what a Terminator actually represents within this game. If I read you the stat line for a Space Marine Terminator, they're weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, right? That I don't understand. They should be ballistic skill 2+, because if you read the fluff, the narrative around a Terminator, they are a mobile gun platform. They basically bolt their feet into the floor, their arm locks in position, they've got the most sophisticated targeting arrays in the entire Imperium. They should just be able to stand there and go, I can hit everything on 2s because I'm an absolute marksman, because that's how they're described in the lore. I don't mind them being weapon skill 3+, but I think the most common Terminator weapon, the Power Fist, should be not suffering from -1 to hit when wielded by a Terminator. I think the Terminator should basically just have a Power Fist that doesn't suffer -1 to hit, to replicate the fact that it is a super hardcore, piece of armor, an incredible ancient relic of the Horus Heresy, for God's sakes. These things should be good.
Well, it's like on Terminator armor, a Power Fist just looks like a regular fist, or like the size is proportionately correct on the Terminator, and it's only when you see Power Fists on like power armor where they look absolutely massive and out of size. So actually, that having that rule sort of. Terminator Power Fists not being -1 would sort of accurately reflect it, because it feels like Power Fists were designed for Terminator armor and have been since co-opted to other types of armor and shouldn't work as well.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. I think Terminators should just not have -1 for that, and you should reflect that with giving them a weapon skill of 3+ within the game, so as they're not hitting on 2+. Because I don't like the idea of them hitting on 2+ in combat. I think 3+ is fair for a weapon with the stats of a Power Fist, -2 AP, D3 damage. It should be hitting on 3s, not on 2s. But it should be hitting on 3s, not on 4s. 4s is crazy. And then their strength and toughness 4, I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. I don't think they should be of a Custodes physiology, so I don't mind the Custodes being strength and toughness 5 versus an Adeptus Astartes being strength and toughness 4. I'm okay with that, because it's sort of still within the armor is a strength and toughness 4 thing, so I'm okay with that. They shouldn't be 2 wounds, they should be 3 wounds, because 2 wounds isn't enough.
There's a lot of 2 damage weapons kicking about as well, and the average for D3 is your 2, or like 1 point something.
Yeah. And also as well, their leadership is fine because of the nature of the unit they are. They don't really care about any of that stuff. Their invulnerable save should be increased to a 4+ rather than a 5+.
Yep.
Because, again, Custodians have all got 4-up invuns coming out of their ears. The Cataphracti variant should be increased to invun 3+. And the Tartarus version should be reduced to 5+ to reflect its relative agility. Because, obviously, the Tartarus ones still have movement 6. I forgot to mention the movement for the Terminators. They're movement 5. Which, again, I'm fine with, because they should be a bit slower than your standard Marine. The other thing I'd introduce for these guys is I would create a rule that reflected their actual tactical nuance. So, again, another thing within the lore around Terminator armor is that it actually acts as a tactical relay for all sorts of data and information. So when you've got a Terminator within range of power-armored Marines, that Terminator's incredibly sophisticated auspexes and all its data links and everything that it has within its armor set is supposed to be feeding data to all the surrounding power armored Marines. So I think they should have a comms uplink that allows that unit to amplify the effect of the reroll 1s of a captain. So if a captain's in Terminator armor and there's a Terminator squad, the Terminator squad can reroll 1s to hit wherever they are on the board. Doesn't need to be in range. It just knows there's a captain somewhere giving them orders, because it's all about that tactical information. I also think as well that they need to change the teleport homer to not be a physical location, but just change these guys to movement 12 and explain it that they just teleport everywhere because they're Terminators. And that's how I would fix them. I would make them fluffier. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they're going to have to be a lot more points in this version, but you'd still take them, right? All of a sudden,
make them the same points as a Custodes.
Yeah. If all of a sudden the Terminator squad moved 12, had 3 wounds, had ballistic skill 2+, had a power fist that always hit on 3s, and they could re-roll 1s if you took a captain in Terminator armor, as long as on the board somewhere, you'd take it, wouldn't you?
How would you differentiate between the Tartarus pattern then, if that's a 6-inch move, but you're teleporting every turn? Or was it like a one-off, like 12-inch?
Yeah, I think you probably want to change that to... you raise a good point, actually. See, there you go, Phil. I appreciate that. That's good. So maybe get rid of the whole teleport everywhere thing, but maybe make it into a one-off shunt move like they used to have for the for the Grey Knight, knight armor thing. So make it so as you can move 24 inches, but you can't finish within 9 of something or whatever. You can do that. Something that gives you redeployment options for them. Because, again, if you think about them in Dawn of War, the very first Dawn of War game, you used to be able to create a teleport relic in your thing, and then your Terminator unit actually did have a personal teleporter, so they could just go boop, 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 and go all over the place. And that was super cool, because it reflected their elite status. You could get them stuck into the heart of the army. You could do interesting stuff with them. And I think Terminators need that. Or they need, maybe, I don't know, maybe rather than changing their tactical relay thing to being, oh, there's a captain on the board, reroll ones, maybe they add 1 to hit to any model that they're within, to any Marine, Space Marine faction model that they're within 6 of, right? They could do that kind of thing. There are various options that could reflect what they bring to the battlefield, but the fact of the matter is what Terminator is a huge, massive, hulking, behemoth unit that is full of data that it should be feeding out to everything around it, that is a killing machine that should be able to, and that teleports around. That's one of the big things about Terminators. They teleport into the heart of action and get stuck in. That's a big part of their storyline. And I feel like that needs to be reflected. And also their bolt guns should be -1 AP as well, like all bolt guns. There you go.
Do you think there's too many other units within the Space Marine Codex that can deep strike, and that therefore that takes away that unique selling point from the Terminators?
So at the moment, the only units that can perform deep strike in the Space Marine book are obviously all the variants of characters in Terminator armor, all the variants of characters with jump packs, Assault Marines, Vanguard Marines, Reavers. Oh, not Reavers, sorry. Is it Reavers? The Primaris ones. Ravagers, yeah. Reavers. The Reavers with grapples, or even, I think, with the fins, they can do it. Interceptors and drop pods, which means that tactical squads can get in drop pods.
So that's quite a lot. I mean, imagine if you got rid of half of them and, say, the Reavers and the Terminators were the only ones that could deep strike. Now, admittedly, that then hampers a Space Marine army in terms of flexibility, but it means that the one thing that's teleporting onto the board, narratively, is the Terminators. I sort of see, guys in jump packs are coming down from the sky. But realistically, they're not doing that, most of the time. 90% of the time, they shouldn't be doing that. They'd be on the battlefield already, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So maybe you could, one option is to restrict the deep strike options of the army to make the Terminators a bit more unique in that ability.
Yeah. Terminators were pretty much one of the first things that they invented in early 40k, right? It was Space Hulk or Space Crusade may have come before it, but Terminators are easily, consistently been one of the most iconic units in the game. When I was a kid growing up playing 40k, everyone wanted to own that Deathwing army because it was cool to have an army of Terminators. And it was cool to have an army of Terminators up until, 6 years ago, where they just ruined them so much that you just sort of got used to the idea that they were unplayable. And that to me is stupid. I can't believe that one of the most rich pieces of lore that they have in their entire range is getting written out in favour of generic ultra sci-fi Primaris Marines and their bulkier versions of themselves. An Aggressor Marine does not look iconic to me. It doesn't personify 40k. A Terminator does. And I don't care if you pay 60 points for my version of Terminators. I don't care if you pay 65 points for my version of a Terminator. You get your money's worth, right? Because when a Terminator squad rocks up and it goes, cool, 5-man Terminator squad with our rapid fire 2 -1 AP bolt guns, and we come down hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, and we butcher one of your horde units in the opening volley and then proceed to charge into a tank and spank it. Okay, fair enough, maybe not kill it, but do significant damage to it. You go, Jesus, Terminator's just turned up. it's got real, and that's really how I feel like that unit should be perceived. It should be a big problem. Whereas in the current game, Terminators turn up, they sort of go and, lightly rub their handkerchief on the nearest thing, and someone goes, "Oh, too much for me," and falls over maybe 2 or 3 models. And then they go, "I'm going to charge in, I've got no attacks, and I mostly miss, and what does hit, you save." And it's like, what is that? That's terrible. Make them more expensive, but make them bloody good. That's my vibe on Terminators. There you go. Phil, do you want to talk about the last unit that you didn't have a chance to chat about at the start?
Well, I was actually going to throw it to Joe and see what he said about what he thinks about Terminators.
Oh yeah, Joe, come on. We haven't heard you. Is he still here?
I am still here.
What do you think about Terminators, Joe?
Oh, crap, aren't they? The thing is, though, it's not just their like the Chaos Terminators, even the Custody Terminators, in my opinion, are a bit bonk in comparison to the rest of their army. I think if you just gave a Terminator a Custodian Guard stats, and I still think that they should hit on 2s, both with shooting and in combat.
Okay.
Because then you can then keep the universal rule of -1 to hit with a power fist, and it still hits on 3s. But it makes things like lightning claws good. And then give them strength and toughness 5 to represent that they're in a big hulking suit, because the interceptors and the Centurions and who are the guys in aggressors? That's the one.
Yeah.
They all get toughness 5.
Oh, that makes sense then. If they're in, get toughness 5, yeah.
Yeah, true.
I sort of do feel like the aggressors are the sort of Primaris Terminator equivalent. Like,
And they're awful.
They're a bit of a combo of Centurions meets Terminator, I think.
Yeah, but from a design perspective,
I
I
like the look of them.
From a design perspective, they're totally forgettable. They are nowhere near as iconic a unit as the Terminator is. They're not. The Terminator is such a different looking thing from a Space Marine, whereas an Aggressor is just a fat Primaris Marine. It's nowhere near as cool. Okay, yeah, sure. They slapped some guns on them and they went, "Look, we've just put some bullets on their head and put some big guns on their arms." But against the Centurion problem, whoever it was who designed the Terminator, and I don't know, maybe it was someone like whoever it was, I don't know.
Jez Goodwin.
Was it Jez Goodwin?
Maybe, I don't know.
He was probably involved back then. They were on a great day. They ticked the box perfect.
If you look at the Space Hulk Terminators and even the Deathwing Terminators from Dark Imperium, they look great. Whereas you can compare it to a Centurion or an Aggressor, which are just like these squat potato models, whereas the Terminator models can be posed really, really nicely and can be very, very dynamic. And Games Workshop's made their rules in such a way that you never see these cool models on the table. But when was the last time you saw a Terminator Captain?
I have seen a Terminator Captain, but he's normally called Gabriel Angelos of the Raven Guard. And then,
yes.
But that's usually it. And then, beyond that, maybe I've seen 1 or 2 people rock up with a Terminator Captain purely to take advantage of in fact, the only time I've seen Terminator Captains was in the early days of 8th, when you could deep strike turn 1, or when you could deep strike within your deployment zone, because what they did was they used to keep them off the board so you couldn't assassinate them with snipers and then bring them down in their turn 1.
And like Terminator Chaplains and Terminator Librarian, you never see them.
Terminator Chaplains were some of the most gorgeous models as well back in the day, weren't they? That just the way that a Terminator Chaplain looks, it's so cool. A Dark Angel's Terminator Chaplain model converted, because obviously there isn't an official version of it, but just look gorgeous. And the same thing with like that weird limited edition one they did for store birthdays or whatever it was.
Was that the Black Library one?
Oh, yeah, it could have been. It's the one where he's got like
With all the skulls going down.
yeah, just gorgeous model. And again, you know, I mean, not to belittle what they've been doing with the various Primaris Lieutenant models they've been putting out for special things, but they're nowhere close to the level of cool that you got from certain Terminators ones. I mean, some Terminator models aren't that great. I mean, you know, the Blood Angels Librarian with the Power Axe that they did for the Blood Angel release wasn't that great. But then the Blood Angels Terminator Librarian with Power Axe that comes in Space Hulk is absolutely iconic with that stance where he's just, you know, again...
If you said to someone, you can have a normal Space Marine captain or a Primaris one, but then you can also take a Terminator captain, and for the cost of that Terminator armor, he gets +1 strength, +1 toughness, +1 wound. Like, you'd be like, yeah, I'll take him, because all of a sudden he's a terrifying tank.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? And again, you change certain elements of it, and you give it a 4-up invuln as well. That would be a big boost, and you give it, you know, a Storm Bolter, which actually is a tangible boost, because all of a sudden you've got... Because this is the thing, at the moment, if you take your captain and put him in Terminator armor, you can't give him a Master-Crafted Bolt Gun. At the moment, a Master-Crafted Bolt Gun is better than a Storm Bolter. But a Storm Bolter's 2 points, and a Master-Crafted Bolt Gun's free. But the thing is and that free is in the number free, not for free. But the thing is that, you know, you put him in Terminator armor, he's taken actually a slight downgrade in shooting power, which is crazy. Again, Terminators are, for me, so much better than this, and they just need rules that reflect that. The models are gorgeous. There is nothing more beautiful than an army of Terminators. They are so freaking cool. It's just, it hurts me that no one uses them anymore, especially as well because I was so excited for this edition because they were talking about how they're going to make armies great again, and I was like, oh, thank God. I've really wanted to play my Deathwing Terminators for the longest time, and then the Deathwing Terminator book came out, or rather the Dark Angels book came out, and I read the Deathwing Terminator rules and just went, why would I ever take these? They're terrible, which hurts me so much because I love the idea of that Deathwing army. I want to love it. I want to be able to use it and enjoy my games, but I know when I take a Deathwing Terminator army, I'm playing at a massive handicap. And the rules are terrible, because the one thing that the Deathwing Terminators used to be amazing at in 7th edition was that they could all go up in Deep Strike and all come down turn 1, right? Whereas now I can't even do that, so I've got I can't have a full unit of army of Terminators, because I've got to take some other shit to basically scatter in so as I don't lose turn 1 because my entire army doesn't turn up.
Well, the rule of 3 would mean you can only take 3 squads max now anyway. That's favourable.
Oh, you've reminded me of that as well. Oh, ruined it.
Sorry.
Ruined it. There you go, anyway, there you go. I think Terminators deserve better. I haven't pointed up what I imagine my fictitious version of it is, but genuinely, if a Terminator had Ballistic Skill 2, Weapon Skill 2, as Joe said, with the -1 still for the Power Fist, 4-up save, 3 wounds, Toughness 5, Strength 5, a 2-up save, 4-up invuln, as I already said, and some kind of comms relay ability that gave it either a boosting effect to models around it or allowed it to reroll 1s based on certain criteria. Whatever that was. If you told me that model was 55 points each, I'd be like, yeah, I'd take it, because...
a Custodian Guard's only 52 points.
Oh, fine.
They're way better.
Yeah. So that's the really mad thing, isn't it? It's like, right now, a Terminator with a Storm Bolter and a Power Fist is 40 points. A Custodian Guard is 12 points more, and it runs rings around them. That is mental. But there you go. That's my unit for improving.
Sounds good.
Right. One last one for you, innit, Phil? The one you've been waiting for, the big one for the Krieg.
This one, it is. It's another Krieg one. This one's like, it's weird because it's obviously, and the reason why it's flawed is because the way the data sheets work in the index is it's got to be generic enough to work for the Astra Militarum units, but also still work for Death Korps Krieg. But it just doesn't work. So the unit I'm talking about is the Hades breaching drill. So the index was sort of written in a way where it had to be quite versatile. So it has to work with the basic regiments, Astromotaran regiments, but as well as applying to the Death Corps of Krieg army as well. And because of that, there's a few sort of weird little things that I'll go into. So the Hades breaching drill itself is a small little tank. Comes up from the ground, has a big drill on the end. Really good in close combat. And in 6th edition, used to have a melter cannon shooting attack, which it doesn't have and hasn't had for a while. But attached to the drill itself is a 10-man veteran squad. Bizarrely, the vets, I think they hit on 4-ups rather than 3-ups, which is how most vets should be in the game. But they're just, because they're generic vets, they're not Death Corps of Krieg engineers, which are so much better. And the only way to take the Hades drill is with what's on the data sheet, which is these vets. It's not quite as fun to play with and not as interesting. So the vets, like I said, they have a 4-up ballistic skill. It should be 3-up. Their shotgun is a standard shotgun, which is Assault 2. And if you're at half range, which is 6 inches, you get +1 strength. The engineers' shotguns have 2 options. They do 2 shots at max range, if I remember rightly, strength 4, and you can also fire Caracas shots, which is basically gives them the gets hot rule that you will wound on a 2-up.
You wound on a 2-up?
Yeah, so it gives them effectively poison.
Is it? Wow, okay.
But on a roll of a 1, you kill yourself. And when you do 2 shots, that's quite likely to happen. And many times have I fired the squad, I've killed half the squad, basically.
But have you got a good return on that investment? How many points per blokey is that going to cost you?
I think it's 8 points a model, because I think it's 80 points for a squad of 10.
Okay, so if you kill a Primaris Marine, it's worth it, right?
Oh, I think so. They're really good at like monster killers. And they do 2 damage as well.
But it's somewhat moot because you don't actually get them anyway. You have to take these terrible vets.
Well, you can take the engineers on their own, which is kind of cool. But because they've got such short range, you then need to put them in a transport. Whereas if you can attach them to the Hades drill, you can then sort of pop up within 9 inches of something, shoot your shotguns twice at 12-inch range, and try and kill the thing that you really want. The Hades drill itself is pretty good in close combat. So it has D6 attacks. The melter cutter drill is the weapon, so it's ×2 strength. So the base strength is 5, so it becomes 10. It's -4, which is suitable because it is melter. So it should be, and does D3 damage. When you're attacking vehicles, you roll D6 of damage instead of D3, which is pretty cool. And it's got a special rule called Fortification Breacher. Fortification Breacher. When attacking a building, change the Hades drill attacks to 2d6 and the melter cutter damage to d6. Which would be fantastic. But again, same problem with the Medusa is it's only for buildings and not a bit more generic. Now, the D6 attacks I don't mind too much. I think the Hades drill in itself is pretty good, though I think the D6 attacks is a bit too random. The main problem for me is the fact that you can't take the engineers with it. Instead, you get vets that aren't very good and don't, they've even got a 5-up save. They've not even got Caracas plating.
Doesn't from a sales perspective on Forge World, don't they heavily associate the engineers with this?
Well,
drill?
Yes. There's literally a bundle deal on Forge World where you buy the drill and the engineers together. And every time an FAQ comes, the little Krieg group all gathers round. we pray to the God Emperor. We will have this, because the thing is, like they even loads of us have emailed in. If you speak to the Forge World email, they say, oh, if you want, you can just house rule it that you pay the points for the engineers and the Hades drill and just take them. That's fine. And I'm like, brilliant. Right, can I do this at an official event then? And it's like, well, of course I can't because it's not an official ruling. And what I might do for the GT is actually email the Warhammer World Events team and be like, look, guys, I want to take my Hades drills. I've got two. They've been sat on the shelf for the best part of a year and a half. I would like to play them at one of your events because that's where I play most of my games. What do you think about this? Do you think that's fair? That's what your own Forge World team says. I imagine they'd be like, no, we've got to follow the correct rules.
Why don't you, based on the simple fact that probably no one knows what is the real rules in this instance, just turn up and be like, yeah, this is the unit.
Well, honestly, I could, but there may be that one person that will then call me out as a cheater. I don't.
Yes, you'll go on Warhammer TV, and the whole of the internet will call you out.
No.
And then you'll lose all of your subscriptions to Instagram.
They will.
True.
They'll be very mean.
So there's a few other cool things. The Hades drill has a 4-up invuln save in close combat. Now, it used to be in 7th edition that the Hades drill could do a tunnel move. So the squad was always attached to the Hades drill. They didn't operate separately, which they can do now. The drill could either do a drill move where it could move 12 inches with the squad. And when it does, it gains a 4-up invuln save for the whole turn, so that would include shooting and close combat. Or it could do a special assault move where you can move underneath buildings. You don't need line of sight to charge, and you did like a crazy Hammer of Wrath attack, which is the effectively the attack you want to do when you were charging people. So you could either do the 12-inch move or the normal move plus the tunnel attack. Sort of similar to how jump packs worked back in those days.
Yeah.
So those rules are kind of cool. I'd like to see more attacks and just give us the engineers.
I think as well, though, I think they should bring back some kind of tunnelling mechanic for it, like the Swooping Hawk unit has Skyleap. I feel like you should probably
come
have...
off and come back on.
Yeah, come off and come back on, like some sort of mechanic where you can redeploy, and you can elect to have the unit that's assigned to it also follow. Maybe there's a restriction in terms of relative range, i.e. you probably need to be within... All models need to be within 3 inches, 6 inches of the Hades drill, but
that makes sense.
The whole unit then just disappears and can redeploy in the preceding turn. I think that would be very characterful for that.
Yeah, I also. Go on, do so.
It would give Guard a lot more manoeuvrability, which they're seriously lacking in as well.
Yeah, they're really slow at the moment.
Because I remember we played Zone Mortalis up at Warhammer World, and they were literally the world's most annoying unit. We were playing in 7th edition because he was like, okay, I'm going to charge you through these 3 walls now, and then Hammer of Wrath the unit to death. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll just skip this round of combat. Remove the models. And they kind of need a terrifying unit.
Yeah, they were so good in 7th edition because of the invulnerable save and the move. Like they still, even still now, suffer from the fact that you can like deep strike in, but it's so easy to fail the charge because you just might not make it in, and there's no way of re-rolling your charge distances. Like sometimes I'll charge in with my engineers and the Hades drill. And it's like the Hades drill, the thing that I want to get in range fails the charge, but my crappy engineers will make it in. And you're like, oh, great, you'll last long.
They gave it the rules for the Morlock, which can tunnel in within something like 1 or 3 inches of a unit, and it does mortal wounds to that unit when it comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back in 6th edition, you used to have a template that you could put down, you could put it anywhere, and if you put it on a model, you did a Hammer of Wrath attack on it. But the thing is, you sort of had to try and kill that unit to make room for the Hades drill to appear. And
Yeah.
if you didn't, you had a deep strike mishap or you were destroyed.
Dan, do you have the Tyranid Codex near you? Because I don't have it with me.
No, not presently. But if you're the Morlock rule, as I remember it, is as you described it with mortal wounds. But then you can't charge or shoot or do anything after when you arrive. You just literally burrow up and do mortal wounds.
That would be better than just turning up and sitting there doing nothing.
Do you know what I think as well with this thing, more so than any other vehicle in the game other than the other drill, the big mole drill.
The big termite one.
Yeah, termite one. I actually think they should just change it so as it doesn't have an attack profile. They should just give it a special rule of when it charges in, it does D3 mortal wounds or D6 mortal wounds, because you're talking about a massive drill. For God's sakes, the thing is just literally a wall of death that just hits you in the face and goes and just mushes you, just turns your body to mush, right? It's designed for smashing through the surfaces of the 41st millennium, which is, there's who knows what kind of crazy material that thing burrows through. You're telling me it can't just smash into something and kill it? I just think it should just be goes in and does, maybe not D3, maybe D6 standard, and then 2D6 against vehicles.
So I've got the termite assault drill rules in front of me. Let's just compare them. So that's strength 7. The drill itself is ×2. So instead of it being 10, that's 14?
Yeah.
-4, again, so that's the same. And a flat 3 damage rather than D3. And then after the bearer has made all of its attacks, you roll a d6, assuming the model has not been destroyed. On a 2+, that model suffers a mortal wound. If it's then not destroyed, you roll again, and on a 3+, it's a mortal wound, and then you roll again, and it's a 4+, it's a 5+, it's a 6+, and you basically keep doing it until you fail that roll, which is a crazy good sort of special rule. And in addition, the full profile, because it does degrade, it does 6 attacks base, then it's D6, and then it's D3. And that kind of fixed number of attacks is pretty solid. You're hitting on 4s, which I think is the same, which is fair enough. And then you get to do the same subterranean assault rule, which is like deep striking, basically.
So what we're saying here is there definitely needs to be a bit of a readjustment in terms of what this thing is doing. Because the Hades drill to me used to be a really scary but also iconically Krieg unit. Like, it was such a unique thing to the Krieg that they would come out through the ground and issue these kind of threats and stuff. And because you used to run them in the Assault Krieg variant, right? Where you would...
So there used to be 2 different versions. So the original 5th edition list allowed you to have infantry that you could have in reserves, and you create a hold when you come out, and any model can, like other infantry units could come out from that, not just the engineers. And then in 6 / early 7th, when you had a PDF version and the Fall of Orpheus, you had the Hades drill had a reasonably okay close combat attack, but you had a melter attack that I think was like 12-inch range, small blast, did a decent amount of damage. That was kind of cool, but the close combat attack wasn't really there. And then in proper 7th edition, you have the Siege of Vrax, effectively a 2nd edition version of that book. That's where you have this new version where you get the in-run save in close combat, you do a Hammer of Wrath attack when you get into the charge, and you can do the special move, which in my opinion was the better of the 2 versions.
Yep. I also think as well the thing should just be, because it's a flipping automated drill device, I feel like it should probably just be able to, like, you can, I think it should be able to burrow out of combat as well if it's in combat. I think it should literally just be I'm here, I've charged in, I do some more wounds, and then I burrow under and come back again next turn and do it again. Just constantly just going in. You either kill it then, or it runs you over and burrows under and comes back up again and just keeps, because I mean, it will only ever be able to do that theoretically in a 5-turn game. It can only do that twice, because it will come up turn 2, do it, go under turn 3, come up turn 4, do it, go down. And if it goes to turn 6, it could do it 3 times, assuming it doesn't die. But that seems reasonable. So yeah, in that instance, I'd say should be doing d6 more wounds, should just be constantly going up I come, smash into something, down I go, back again, push, like literally, like someone's just programmed it in as a mad killy robot and gone, off you go, mate. Murder and just.
Well, that's also one of the weird things. So the 7th edition version that got right, the Hades drill was attached to the squad because the squad is basically a mobile artillery piece that needs an operator. Whereas in previous editions and the current edition, it acts independently. But if you look at the model, it's got a little platform at the back for someone to stand on it. So it does need an operator. Now you could argue that you could just model a person to be on it, and then it could ride around independently. But I sort of like the idea that the squad was attached to it and has to stick with it. But I didn't like the fact that it was literally a single unit, and the majority toughness ruled in that edition of the game. So even though it had like toughness 7, you were wounding it so easily because the majority of the squad was toughness 3, and yeah, you got your in-bun safe. But the majority toughness rule was the only thing that was like flawed when it was a single unit.
Would it be cool as well if they added a self-destruct stratagem to it as well, based on its current criteria, just so you can just literally just run it in and then just blow it up, like do the old tower. Yeah, just literally just chuck it in and just blow it up and stuff. So literally you could have it pop up and blow up because it's just a thing, which would be quite cool. I don't know.
I mean, another discussion for another day could be all the ideas I have for Krieg stratagems, because I think they would be so thematic. And there's so much potential with what you could do with that. Yeah, it'd be great to see what the rules guys finally do come up with whenever a Krieg thing appears at some point.
One of these days. Well, there we go. That seemed like a perfectly elegant segment, although I don't think Joe mentioned much there on the closing moments. Joe?
Yes?
Thoughts and feelings? You feeling good about the upcoming segment where you're going to talk about your army list?
Yeah, I've got a pretty, what I feel like is a pretty solid army. But, like everyone else, I'm like, ooh, I could do this, or I could do an entirely different army because I'm mad. And then, no, I've got a solid list that I think I get to trial it at the end of the month at an event that we're going to down in Poole, which is.
Well, I'll tell you what, Joe. Rather than you talking about it right now, let's transition to that final segment where we talk about your plans for Grand Tournament Heat 3. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Boom. You happy, Phil? And now, to close out this rather long episode, as it seems to have gone, we're going to talk to Joe about his army for the Grand Tournament Heat 3, Warhammer 40,000 Grand Tournament Heat 3. Joe, what are you taking, mate?
I am taking Imperial Soup.
Imperial Soup?
Imperial Soup.
My goodness.
But I've changed it, like the hipster I am.
Changed it from what? I do not understand what you mean.
So, the current is Imperial Guard, Knights, and Blood Angels characters, or Custody characters.
By the current, you mean the bestest?
The bestest.
The bestest of the net lists.
There you go,
Yep.
there you go. So you're changing the net list?
I am. I've changed the net list.
You're like Neo.
I am. I'm changing the net list to Custodies, Imperial Knights, and Adeptus Mechanicus.
Jesus. Do you think it'll catch on? Will this
controversial?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, technically, I could class the Mechanicus and the Knights under one banner because I'm taking the Mechanicus rules. that they're knights.
Do the mechanics get the armatures though?
No, but we'll hush hush on that.
All right, fine.
But,
So technically, if you didn't take the stuff you're going to take, you could do it.
well, the Mechanicus household still has the Mechanicus keyword.
It's true. It's true.
So,
But the
I can live
Mechanicus
with
book doesn't have armatures in it.
that. No, but I won't tell anyone that.
That's fine. That's fine. So you're going to cheat, are you?
I won't cheat. I will bend the rules to work in my benefit.
Ah, fine. That's a totally different thing.
It's basically when Games Workshop put the list of names at the end, I don't have mixed soup or mixed Imperium next to mine.
But you would do if you still had Custodes.
I will. We'll just tell them to hush hush on that.
So under this explanation of events, you're gonna bulk it. You're gonna put all your knights in with Mechanicum, and Custodes in with Mechanicum. They're a special type of Mechanicum Custodes, are they?
They are, because like they got bikes, and someone's got to maintain that bike.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
There you go.
You better tell us what's in this list then, Joe. Come on, run us through it.
So I will start off with a battalion of Adeptus Mechanicus under the Styges Forge World rule.
The Styges?
Styges?
I think.
Which was that?
I'm going to say Styges.
I'd say Styges.
Styges.
Well, it's Stygies.
Yeah, Styges.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it.
Styges.
What does that give them, though?
Or Stygies.
Stage eyes.
So that gives them a -1 when they are being shot at from 12 inches away or more.
So they're like LLL talk.
They are, yes.
Or Raven Guard.
Or Raven Guard. The two HQs are a Text Priest Dominus and a Text Priest Engine Seer. The Dominus is good because he has that re-roll 1 to hit when shooting bubble. The Text Priest Engine Seer doesn't, but he can just mill around with the knights and repair 1 wound a turn. The only reason he's in there is that he's a 47-point HQ. So
that's efficient. What do you get for 47 points?
You get an Omniscion Axe, which is a power axe, that does its +1 strength, -2 flat 2 damage. Not bad. So it makes him strength 5. He gets a las pistol and a servo arm, which is basically a power fist that does -2 AP and a flat 3 damage.
How many wounds does he have?
He has 4 wounds.
Really? For 47 points?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. He gets a lot of stats, gear, and abilities for 47 points.
Yeah, he's got a 3-up save, a 6-up invulnerable. He still gets Canticles of the Omnissiah as well.
He's amazing for 47 points.
He is, yeah.
That's something about don't a lot of Admech get a 6-up feel no pain save. Oh, is it feel no pain or invuln?
Invuln.
I mean, it's a bit rubbish, but better than nothing.
Well, everyone, even all the Skatara units, they all have the 6-up invuln. It's not that great, but it's something.
It's great when it saves you.
Yeah.
When it works, it's the best thing.
Yeah. It is the best thing ever. And then on top of that, I've got 2 units of 5 Skitari Vanguard and 1 unit of 8, because I wanted to make it exactly 1750.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Are you not going for the little men with guns on wheels?
No, because I've decided that they're actually awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, both versions of them.
Both versions of them, just because their sheer points is madness bananas.
Madness bananas cheap or madness bananas expensive?
Madness bananas expensive.
Oh.
So the ones with the grav cannon, because they're the only ones really worth taking.
Right.
A unit of 3 of those is 198 points.
But they're pretty good for 198 points, though, right?
What, they're shots?
The Cataphren destroyers, their weapon skill and ballistic skill 4+, strength and toughness 5, 3 wounds and 2 attacks and a 4-up save. They don't get a negative for moving and shooting, but when you're hitting on 4s on average, like Phil was those with his guard, the moment you come up against someone with a -1 to hit, it scuppers you really badly.
But can't you increase their to hit rolls with the whole things?
No. There is a stratagem where if you have a unit of those and a unit of Castellans, you get +1 to hit, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It's
the hitting
interesting.
will freeze them.
It's all. I thought people were more into the little robot men with wheels rather than the little robot man with hooves.
Um,
Well, they were really big in 7th edition, weren't they?
And early 8th as well. There was still a lot of people rocking them early doors in it.
they, like, don't get me wrong, they have got a devastating fire output. So the grav cannons, a 30-inch range, heavy 5, strength 5, -1, -3, 1 damage. If the unit's got a 3-up save, that damage becomes D3.
Wow.
So 3 of them's putting out 15 shots. But it's so many points. So, like, that unit is nearly the cost of the whole detachment minus the Dominus.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It seems almost not to. I hate to compare units from other codexes, but it does seem sort of similar in firepower to like a Lehman Russ Punisher or similar. I mean, that's 15 shots, and that's, I don't know, 160-ish, maybe a bit more, because 150-ish is the base value of a Lehman Russ.
But they don't have the toughness or the save of a Lehman Russ.
No, that's true.
But Lehman Russ doesn't have objective secure, unless of course you do the thing where it does.
Yeah, and the spearhead detachment. I mean, to do that is quite. I mean, you can't do that with just one of them. You need to then really be taking 3 or a bunch of other heavy slots, other units to fill up those slots in the detachment.
But the Scutari is still good. Their ballistic skill 3. If they've got enhanced data tethers, which I've given all 3 squads, there's a stratagem to give them +2 to hit. So the 15 shots that's coming out of that 5-man squad is hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s.
Blimey.
And then any 6s to wound become damage 2, which is really useful. And they've still got that radium poisoning, so when their next enemy unit, that unit gets -1 toughness. So I found that's really useful against high toughness opponents when my knights are in combat. So if I come up against something like another knight, Wraith Knights, Wraith Lords kind of thing, dropping your opponent's toughness from 8 to 7 can really swing things.
Does that work on vehicles then?
I'm pretty sure it does.
Blimey.
I will find the exact wording.
Why not, eh? Seeing as you've got it there. Do we need to make some idle
no, I
chit-chat?
lied. I'm a terrible liar.
Oh,
It says reduce the toughness of enemy units other than vehicles, but that'll still work on monsters.
Oh yeah, sure.
it would do. It would do. Just not Imperial Knights.
Not Imperial Knights. Oh well.
Or Wraith Knights, or any of the examples you
Well,
gave.
no, the Wraith Lords are still monsters.
Oh,
Things
Wraith
like-
Lords, maybe. Oh, now you're. Maybe.
I don't think a Wraith Knight's even a vehicle either.
Possibly not. They might have changed that. I don't know. No one takes Wraith Knights anymore. They're terrible.
But like Riptides, stuff like that. Don't think they're vehicles either.
Okay, so there's some good options there.
Yeah, but mainly they're a small unit that can hover around at the back of the board to capture objectives, and that -1 to be shot at makes them a little bit more survivable.
What's the range of the old carbine, whatever it is, rifle thing?
It's only 18 inches.
That's still not bad, though, is it?
No, like the way armies deploy, 3 of the deployment types have an 18-inch deployment range anyway. So your opponent's going to be on top of you quite quickly. So that's not really a major issue.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The second detachment is a super heavy detachment of Imperial Knights.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm still running Questor Mechanicus and the House Crast traits, which gives them the 6-up, feel no pain, basically. And the
sure
cool
that's
stratagem.
House Crast or is that House Tyrannas?
Oh, I don't know. I just put
It's
it
your
in.
army list, mate. Come on now.
I know.
Got to get it right.
You got to get it right. You can't tell everyone you're running House Cress and then find out you're running House Tyrannus.
It's when the thing is, though, you play against your opponent. Oh, how's she doing? Oh, it's the one with the 6-up, feel no pain. And they're like, cool, because they don't know the name either.
Well, I expect more from the person in charge of the army, you know. I expect people to know what house they're from.
It's Tyrannus.
There you go.
There we go. The 6-up, feel no pain, and then obviously the cool stratagem that if they die and they don't explode, they can get back up again on a 4+. But I'm actually quite a big fan of the noble sacrifice stratagem, which means that they explode on a 4+. And in games, that's actually really helped me out. So I played against someone with Harlequins, and they surrounded my Gallant with like 3 troop units and a Shadow Spear, and it just blew up and wiped out the entire lot and damaged a bunch of vehicles. And I was like, well, that was a major help. So I can live with that.
Good trailer.
So the detachment is a Warden, which is the Gatling Cannon Sword guy, an Armiger Helverin, and a Gallant. And the Gallant, an exalted court character with the Iron Bulwark trait and the heirloom of the Paragon Gauntlet. Because why wouldn't you?
Ooh.
Standard.
Yeah, standard. And the fact that it goes down to...
Have we checked in the rules pack for this one? Because I know when we went to the doubles tournament, there was in the rules pack you were able to change relics and stratagems from game to game. Have they classified or clarified in the GT one that you have to declare all relics and warlord traits or warlords and so on before turning up to the games? I assume you have.
I don't know. We'll have to have a look at that.
I think last year they did, so I'm going to assume it's still in effect. Sorry, it was a silly, pointless question to ask. Carry on.
And then I've got a Supreme Command detachment of 3 shield captains on Dawn Eagle bikes. One of those is my Warlord on the Auric Aquilus bike, which gives him the 3-up invuln and the reroll charges, and the Warlord trait of Superior Creation, which gives him the 5-up feel no pain. So basically the army works around the idea of the Gallant and the Warden just kind of charge up the middle of the board with the bikes. And then the bikes are basically there for clearing out hordes and like smaller units, allowing the knights to get to the more squishy stuff in the middle. And if the opponent does charge down and try and kill my shield captain, I can use the shoulder the mantle stratagem and just make another shield captain my warlord.
Remind me, they generate a new warlord trait for that, right?
They do, yes.
They can't have the same one again, though. It has to be a new one.
No, I don't know where my codex is. Oh, no, I left it in the bathroom.
Oh, fine. We'll just assume beyond
We'll
that. It's
say
fine.
it's something different, but
Yeah, we'll say, but we don't know for sure.
Do you have to declare that beforehand as well? Because I just checked, it does say psychic powers, warlord traits, chosen relic.
no, you don't. So when you do shoulder the mantle, you then choose a character to take over as the warlord, and then he generates a warlord trait.
Yeah, I thought it would just be he just counts as the warlord for denying slave a warlord. But that's even better if you get warlord trait out of it.
Yeah, because you don't get warlord until that one's dead.
And then someone else shoulders the mantle, right?
Yeah. So you've essentially got 3 warlords, like that cool Alpha Legion tactic they used to have.
Oh, what, the one from the old Legions book at the end of 7th. Yeah, that was cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I have a question, Joe.
Yarp.
Are we ready to ask questions? Is there more that you were going to tell us?
No, that is it.
Okay. I have a question. Do you not worry that your army is going to get completely screwed over by a ruins, i.e. everything in your army bar the Skitarii, which rhymed much better than I thought it would have done. I apologise for that. Everything in your army bar the Skitarii can't climb up buildings. In an assault capacity, at least.
Yes and no. Warhammer World doesn't have like a huge amount of terrain on its tables, I've noticed. So, and there's a lot of open ground.
Yep.
So that's where the knights will hang around. I'll make sure if it's an objective-based game, then I'll place all my objectives on the ground floor. And the bikes, even though they can't charge up onto ruins, can still get up on the ruins in the movement phase.
Wait, bikes can?
Yeah.
Aren't they classed as vehicles then?
Yeah, so the thing is, because
they're
they've got
jet bikes, they've got the fly keyword.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, of course. Yeah.
Because they've got the fly keyword, they can in the movement phase move into the building or move into the ruins. It's in the assault phase, as we've kind of agreed as a general consensus. They can still charge if they're on the same level, but the problem obviously for them is if, say for example, stuff's on the second level, they can't then go through the floor, and then wobbly model syndrome states that they then obviously have to go down, and then if you can't be, it's a really annoying situation now for the Shield Captain on bike, which is why I think Captain Smash is slightly better, because despite the fact that he has lost some of his 1-inch charge capabilities with the whole vertical distance stuff, he is still an infantry model, so he can still interact with the ambiguous rule set that is ruins.
Captain Smashes were something that I was looking at. I was actually looking at a Captain Smash of his standard capacity with the Thunderhammer Storm Shield. And then Mephiston, and then a Blood Angels Captain with twin lightning claws. Because he can put out a monstrous amount of attacks. But the thing that swung it for me was the simple case of that the bikes just have such a ridiculously huge fire output.
Yeah.
And if there's always one at every one of these tournaments, like the 90 Plague Bearers, 90 Blood Letters.
Yeah.
And the bikes can work on and seriously thin out those Blood Letters, and then hopefully have the maneuverability to keep away from Plague Bearers.
Yeah.
So, and then if I get the Skitarii into combat with things like Plague Bearers, other Space Marines, other Custodes, they'll drop their toughness down, so the Custodes become toughness 4, and things like Space Marines and Plague Bearers go down to toughness 3, which means that the Custodes' close combat weapons wound them on 2s.
Yeah.
So
that's not bad.
Yeah.
I suppose the only other thing that concerns me a bit with your list is its apparent reliance on medium to short range weapons, Obviously,
Yeah.
the Warden's guns range 36, right, for the Gatling cannon? Or is it 48?
Warden.
I feel like it's 36, but I can obviously be wrong.
It's 36.
Boom, look at that. My weird
Yeah.
mind. Yeah, so you got that's probably that and the auto cannons on the Halverin are your two longest range weapons, right?
Yeah, if I had the money, I'd replace the Warden with well, actually, I'd either replace the Warden or the Gallant with two more Helverins.
So you'd actually want more Halverins than you would. So would you what? 3 Halverins all in?
Yeah, three Helverins and then either a Warden and a Gallant.
So yeah, I would probably agree with that mentality because I think when I think about your army list and its composition and what's in it, the stuff that would worry me is first of all probably the Warden. Second of all, I would be concerned by obviously the shield captains on bikes, and then the Helverin would definitely be a concern as well. The shield captain, I feel like I could probably neutralize by utilizing terrain creatively, just because the way that works now is a bit silly. Again, same thing with the Gallant. You can neutralize that by just sitting up on something because. And this is a gripe that I think me and Joe have kind of expressed and agreed upon many times over since recent games. I do not understand how Imperial Knights need to spend, what is it, 2 CPs or 1 CP?
Well, for devastating reach.
For devastating reach, yeah.
Is one command point.
It's
I've
ridiculous.
also developed another gripe for that.
Yeah.
It's one command point to attack something on a building, but you can only charge one unit in that building. So even if there's 3 units, all with a single model stood next to each other, you can only charge one of those units.
You know, one of the other funny things about that is as well is you can't charge for it. The way they've written the rule, if you want to be really, really annoying, is if you're playing at Warhammer World, unless you happen to be playing on one of the boards that's using Sector Mechanicus or the new Sector Imperialis terrain, if they're using the old Cities of Death stuff, you can't actually even do it to them because they don't have that. They're not one of those.
Well, I think it'd be fair enough to say that that's Sector Imperialis because that is sort of what the new terrains replace.
I agree
So
with you, Phil.
I don't think anyone would have problems.
Hey, look, if you want to be an arsehole to Joe when you play him at Warhammer World, go. I think you'll find that's a Cities of Death board, mate.
Well, I think there's plenty of ways to annoy him. I'll put all of my objectives on buildings and I'll have all my men hiding out there and making sure you can't fit any of your bikes on there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
hiding away from your knights for the
Well,
whole game.
I think
Not
that's
that I could do that, but I mean,
yeah. I think that's what my thing is with that army. So much of it is reliant upon fighting as much as it's reliant upon close range. So my thing is, if I was playing against you in that army, is all I would be intent on doing is using range to my advantage, baiting you in, because eventually the Gallant's got to come forwards. The Warden doesn't need to come forwards, but you can probably threaten the Warden at range as much as it can return fire, and then you're in a situation where you're bringing your stuff in closer, and then a lot of other stuff can kind of go against you, because the fact is you've got your most clear and sort of obvious strategy is turn 1 you got to commit to going forwards, and people can and probably will utilize certain strategies against that to your negative. So I would say, for me, listening to that list and thinking about it, I'd either consider the Captain Smash scenario over and above the Shield Captains, although I do love those Shield Captains, and to be fair, those Shield Captain models you've painted, are beautiful, and they've done really good things for you in the past, so I don't think we should be too discouraged by them overall. But I definitely would say that probably changing out either the Warden or the Gallant for a couple more Helverins would probably do your army a world of good. So yeah, that's my feedback on it. What say you, Joe? Does that sound fair?
Oh, definitely. At the moment, this is just a list of things that I put together with what I have. Um, like I had considered not putting the AdMech in and running just a battalion of custodes, which would then give me a more resilient army. But in return, I'd have way less models on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the and I do really like Captain Smash, but I think with the firepower that the bikes put out, they're way more versatile.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, because Captain Smash will either have to deep strike in and then charge, and once he's charged and killed whatever he's gone for, he normally just gets riddled with bullets and dies.
No, agreed.
Yeah. If I can get myself 2 more Helverins, then I will probably run them. Or the other option is dropping the Gallant and putting in 2 Warglaives, which I do have.
I'm not sure the Warglaives are going to really help you in the way that Helverins would. I think if there's any odd chance that you could get a couple Helverins, I think that's the way to go. But Phil, what do you think of Joe's list? What's your opinions?
Oh, it's pretty good. I like it. I mean, like I said, there might be issues with people placing their objectives in ruins or having the majority of their models in ruins. And if you get a sort of, I can never remember the name, the long table edge deployment, you might struggle because you'll probably not be doing a lot for the first turn.
Well,
but I think they're all kind of like minor issues.
Yeah, the Knights have got a pretty solid long movement, and the Helverin and the Warden have got pretty decent long range on them. But it is not a huge amount of firepower, which is the downside.
It's good firepower though, man. Helverins are definitely good, and the Warden is good, especially if you give him the relic where he's the Endless Fury. It's probably worth considering giving to him as well for the extra. Immediately, it'll cost you an extra 2 CPs over and above the 1 that you're spending already to give the Paragon to the Gallant. But it's something to consider for sure. I think overall, I mean, this is the thing. I like the inclusion of the AdMech stuff and what that adds to the overall thing.
And with the AdMech, I can give. So I've just dropped. If I drop the Gallant, I can fit in the 2 Helverins quite comfortably. And if I put the Dominus near the Warden, he can then benefit from Canticles of the Omnissiah, which is actually quite useful because if you choose Shroud's Arm for the first turn, he'll actually count as being in cover, which is quite good, which would give him a 2-up save first turn. And then turn 2, I can give him like the reroll 1s for shooting.
Why don't you drop all the shield captains and put Guilliman in? Old girly man.
Guilliman's good, but he's not as fast, and his shooting output's not as good.
True. He does let your Helverins reroll 1s.
Yeah, but that's the only ones that would be benefiting from it.
And the Warden. If you have the Warden there as well, he'll reroll 1s.
Yeah, I suppose.
Have a nice weird little circle around him with 3 Helverins and a Warden at the front. And he can walk behind them with his big flaming sword and mess anyone up who comes near him.
Yeah, but then he just becomes he's a 300-point babysitter.
400-point.
400-point babysitter.
Yep.
I think he's way better suited for leading from the front, but with a few Space Marines in front of him.
You're probably not wrong. Yeah.
I could look at building my Preceptor, because he's 419 points. So if I drop the Warden,
what's the Preceptor armed with again?
The
Las Cutter, I believe.
Yeah, so the Preceptor's the one that gives the armigers reroll ones natively.
Yep.
And his gun is the Lasin Pulsar, which has got 2 settings. It's got low intensity, which is a 36-inch range, heavy 2d6, strength 6, -2 d3 damage gun. Or high intensity, which is 18-inch range, heavy d6, strength 12, -4 d6 damage.
Blimey.
He's also got a multi-laser, and he can either take the Reaper Chainsword or the Thunder Gauntlet. I'd probably give him the Chainsword, because then the Thunder Gauntlet is -1 to hit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Unless, of course, you gave him the Paragon Gauntlet, which is still an option for him.
Yeah, but it's not as efficient because it's hitting on 3s with only 4 attacks, whereas the Gallant gets the 5 attacks hitting on 2s.
I suppose the thing is, though, with the Gallant again, is it's that turn of commitment always with the Gallant. Unless, of course, someone's crazy and runs at you. I mean, the craziest thing anyone playing against your army could do if they're going first is move towards you. That would be crazy suicidal right there.
Yeah.
No, man,
I could give him the Thunderstrike Gauntlet because it's still pretty scary. Him hitting on. See, he'd be hitting on 3s with a -4 flat 8 damage.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about the Paragon Gauntlet now.
Yeah, on the Preceptor.
Yeah, still be good. Still be very good. But there we go. I actually think that was quite a nice list, though, mate, all things considered. I know it probably was a bit weird about it in the initial sense. I just wanted to kind of put across the things that might have been a point of concern. But, I think you are right. Within the confines of Warhammer World, the terrain pieces are quite defined, and they're relatively slim on the ground. I mean, they do have good amounts of terrain, but not hideous amounts.
And the terrain they do have as a building normally has a large amount of foot space on the floors. Yeah. Normally, it's like the Sector Mechanicus terrain. They always have that figure of 8, which is about a 6-inch in diameter, kind of thing, and 2 of those next to each other. So you're going to need several squads to fill that up to stop a shield captain getting up there.
Yeah, and even then, the shield captain can shoot his way onto it, right?
Yeah. So,
it's definitely not an ideal strategy by any stretch of the imagination. The buildings that always concern me in Warhammer World, and we were sort of saying about this before, are the ones where they've just built boxes, and they're 3 stories tall. You know the ones I'm talking about. They're 3 stories tall and they're boxes. And a lot of the time, myself included, when it didn't really matter, people go, "Oh, I'm just putting them on the top," but they're actually in the middle. Is that cool? And people tend to go, "Yeah, sure, it's cool, man. That's fine. Understood." The thing is, with you, if anyone says that to you, you need to go, "No. They need to be in there if they're in there, because that will screw you over something crazy, because you can't get in."
So it'd literally be a case of no, because they can't actually be placed on that floor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fair enough argument as well. So you just need to say that's impossible terrain, right? Because you can't fit your models on it.
Yeah, you can go up on top of it.
That's like the world's most obscure wobbly model, because there's no floor for them to actually stand on.
Well, the floor's there, they just can't be on it.
It's Pavlov's floor, basically. It might be there, or it might not be.
It's clearly there. You can see it. It's just that it's just that you can't put the model on it, and I think that's fair enough. I just think things to be mindful of when you're running that army is just to try and clarify those things from the outset. And I think being honest with people, just say, look, my army, you could just bunker into that building and I can't beat you. Especially like if you came up against like a guy running lots of Dark Reapers or lots of God knows what, and he just went, oh yeah, they're all in there because reasons, and then it's like they're just raining hell on everything, and your knights can't get to them. Well, I mean, they can get to them once with their 4 attacks or whatever, but it's not really going to make a huge dent. Your jet bikes can't get to it. You're just going to rely on your Skitarii to run up there and shoot them out of it or try and charge them. So I just think, just clarify these things before. Don't end up like you did at that last tournament we went to together where you lost a couple of games because your knights can't walk through walls. There you go. Well, I think that perfectly sums up today's, or rather this podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been an enjoyable... Crikey, how long do you reckon this has been? 4 hours? 3.5 hours?
An emotional time.
It has been an emotional time. This is definitely going to be the longest one we've ever done, which is saying something, because these always feel like they're going longer and longer. But we hope you've enjoyed. Consider liking and subscribing. That's always nice. I know, obviously, now I'm starting to sound a little bit shilly when I say that, but it kind of feels like it's necessary to do it. Joe, do you want to try and convince people? Give someone a good reason to subscribe or give a 5-star review to this fantastic content they've just listened to.
Because we're hilarious, and without it, we don't get any level of human confirmation that we are useful in any way.
I mean, that is entirely true. Phil, would you like to elaborate beyond that, or do you just echo entirely what Joe said?
Well, I mean, if you guys out there don't give us a 5-star review, Joe will personally come around your house and cry in front of you until you do.
I will.
No one.
But what you're implying there is everyone on Earth who hasn't given us a 5-star review, which is plentiful right now, is going to have Joe visit them. I mean, it'll take him the best part of 4 years to go through that process in his local town. Like, this is going to be insane.
Right. You best get your coat on, mate. You've got to start now.
Do you think?
It'd be expensive as well, if anything.
It's fine. It's fine, Joe. You'll be all right. You know, you'll find a way.
You
can get people to pay you to leave. They'll be fine. You could be like, do you ever remember that old Tango ad where they were giving away megaphones and James Corden was invaded by 8 men who just came into his house with megaphones and repeated every word he said?
No.
Right, okay, well, check that ad out. It's 90s advertising gold. And, you could just be like that, but one person. That'd be great. And obviously, not repeating what people say, you're just sobbing. I think as well you should start slowly removing your clothes as the sobbing continues, just to sort of see how that goes.
While maintaining a strong eye contact.
Yeah. But bleary-eyed.
Joe does have dreamy eyes, though.
Yeah. I lull my opponents into a false sense of security by flashing my eyelashes at them.
That's it. He's like one of those. I don't know. Is there an animal that does that? Who's like female Black Widows or something? I don't know. Yeah. Lures them in and then bam, dead.
and then I eat them after impregnating them.
After impregnating. I think surely it's the other way around. They have to impregnate you.
No. I don't roll like that.
Right, well, anyway, there you go. That's been episode 7 of the Lookouts 40k podcast. Thank you very much for listening. From me, Joe, and Phil, we'll see you again next time, which should be 2 weeks on Saturday, Sunday. We'll keep you posted. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.